Hi, Liz.
evening, everyone. Do we have all council members on board? We do. Okay. All right. So good evening, everyone. I will call to order this regularly scheduled meeting of the City of Campbell Council on this Tuesday, February 16th, 2021. This regular City Council meeting is conducted via telecommunication and is compliant with the provisions of the Brown Act and Executive Order N29-20 issued by the Governor. This City Council meeting is being live streamed on Channel 26, the city's website and YouTube. May we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Vibey.
Present.
Councilmember Landry.
Did you say me?
I did.
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear the whole thing. I'm here.
Councilmember Lopez.
Present.
Vice Mayor Resnikoff.
Here.
Mayor Gibbons.
Here. And Deputy Clerk, it says we're live on YouTube, but it doesn't say recording.
That's correct. They probably started recording it before we went live on YouTube.
Okay, thank you. And at this point, we would like to do the Pledge of Allegiance. Would you all stand at attention and say, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God. I'm doing it backwards, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I think I'm going to have to start reading that. You say it so automatically now. And at this time, we have special presentations and proclamations. Under that item, we have a Black History Month. It is the recommended action that the City Council proclaim February as Black History Month to honor the accomplishments of African Americans throughout our nation's history. And I think, am I supposed to read the proclamation, Andrea?
You can if you like. You want me to bring it to you real quick?
It's in the agenda, yes?
Yes.
Let's see if I can find it. Okay.
Page 7.
Thank you. Thank you. This is a proclamation of the mayor of the city of Campbell. Whereas during Black History Month, we celebrate the many contributions made by African Americans to our economic, cultural, spiritual, and political development. And whereas Black History Month grew out of Negro History Week by the historian Carter G. Woodson in 1926. And whereas the 2021 national theme for observance is Black Family, Representation, Identity, and Diversity, which explores the African movement and the spread of Black families across the United States. And whereas the observance of Black History Month encourages all citizens to celebrate the heritage and culture of African Americans, both past and present. Whereas the City of Council is proud to honor the history and accomplishments of African Americans in our community. Now, therefore, I, Elizabeth Liz Gibbons, Mayor of the City of Campbell, do hereby recognize February 2021 as Black History Month in the City of Campbell. And I would note that the Santa Clara County Library has some wonderful programs and books and discussions on Black History Month. Okay. The next section is on communications and petitions. There are none. And we will go to the portion of the meeting for oral requests. This is a portion of the meeting which is reserved for persons wishing to address the City Council on any matter not on the agenda. Persons wishing to address the council are requested to asked to register in advance, and they are allowed 2 minutes. The law generally prohibits the council from discussion or taking action on such items. However, this council may instruct staff accordingly regarding oral requests. Has the deputy clerk received any comments on for an item not on this agenda?
Yes, we do.
Yes, please.
We have Raja who would like to speak.
Okay, thank you. Raja, would you come on to speak? And you have 2 minutes.
Hi, my name is Raja. 2 weeks ago, I saw you folks talking about the property on Hamilton, and there was discussion about housing for low-income families and things like that. Last week, the Planning Commission was talking about the same thing. They almost had a 2-hour discussion with different developers of the low-income housing builders. And since the general plan update is happening, I know I have spoken about this topic in the past. I emailed you folks. I want to again bring it to your attention that there is 100 and some odd acres of Dell area, which is like really a good area to do mixed development and low-income family housing and improve that part of the city. So I want to bring that again to your notice. And also the second item I want to bring to your notice is, again, as part of GPU, St. Thomas area, a neighborhood plan that covers 1/3 of the city. I have never heard any neighborhood plan covering 1/3 of a city. Again, I think that is a good area for bringing streamlining it along with the city. Like St. Thomas neighborhood area has a lot of design restrictions and stuff. I'm hoping that the amount of area can be reduced, and also the different elements can be streamlined much more with other neighborhoods in the city for approvals. Thank you.
Thank you, Raja. We are doing a lot of work on the general plan and housing element in the next few months. So thank you for your comments. And anyone else? Deputy City Clerk?
Yes, we have one more. We have Michael.
Thank you. Michael, please join and let us know. You have 2 minutes.
Hello, can you hear me? Hello, this is Michael. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Michael, I think I see you and you're unmuted, but we're not hearing you.
Sorry. Can you hear me now?
City Clerk, do we need to do anything to help Michael speak?
I'm not sure what the problem is. I do see that he is unmuted. Let me promote him to a panelist and see if that helps.
Okay.
Hello, can you hear me?
Michael, are you able to participate now?
All right, if we need to, we might see if he can connect with us and speak later. If not, he'll need to come back for the March 2nd meeting, or I would encourage him to submit emails to the city manager and city council members.
Hello, can you hear me?
Okay. Seeing that he still can't connect, we will now move on to the council announcements. The City of Campbell continues to work closely with our partnering agencies to monitor how the coronavirus is impacting our communities. We are actively monitoring the information provided by the U.S. Center of Disease Control and reviewing guidance provided by the county's public health department. We continue to take proactive steps to prioritize the health and safety of our employees and community members. Our focus is to maintain essential services and to keep you informed. You will see that we have campbellca.gov as a resource for all of you. Santa Clara County continues to expand access to COVID-19 vaccinations to anyone aged 65 or older. You'll notice there's a lot of information on in the news and on social media. Please be sure and go to sccfreevax.org or call 408-970-2000 to get accurate information and assistance with making vaccine appointments. In addition, the county has opened a site at Levi Stadium, 2 drop-in vaccination sites in East San Jose and Gilroy. Additional drop-in vaccination sites are open and phone appointments are now available for those who don't have access to the internet. Residents 65 and older and healthcare workers can make appointments for the county health system vaccine site through the Valley Connect call center. That's the same number, 408-970-2000. To find out who can currently be vaccinated, who will be eligible to receive vaccinations next, and frequently asked questions, go to the county dashboard. Please, that dashboard has a really extraordinary amount of information. Takes time to sort through all of the tabs and buttons, but many, many questions that you would like to know the answers to are on that web page. It is meant to be very transparent to all our residents of Campbell and the county. The city clerk's office is accepting applications for a vacancy on the Historic Preservation Board for one short term expiring in October 2021. The appointment of members to the Historic Preservation Board shall be made from among professionals in the historic preservation related disciplines. To be eligible for appointment on this volunteer advisory commission, applicants must reside within Campbell city limits and be at least 18 years of age. Applications may be obtained from the city clerk's office or on the boards and commission page of the city webpage. For more information, please see the city website, campbellca.gov, or email the clerk's office at clerksoffice, CLERKSOFFICE @campbellca.gov. I, along with council members, are excited to report on the construction of the new all-inclusive play area at J.D. Morgan Park. This project will reconstruct the playground on the Bud Avenue side of the park to increase play value and allow for all-inclusive play. Funding for this project is provided in part from a grant of the County Santa Clara's All-Inclusive Playground Grant Program, along with contributions from the city's park fund. The existing park equipment had reached its successful end and it needed to be changed, and converting it to an all-inclusive park with this grant from the county was ideal option for the city. The project is scheduled for completion in August. Okay, next, ready to spring into action. The spring activity guide is available online. I saw that on my Facebook page today. Spring registration at the Campbell Community Center begins today. Please visit campbellca.gov for online classes and registration information. We are going to get outside and doing classes soon, I hope. The community center track, tennis courts, handball courts, outdoor fitness equipment, and playgrounds are open and require masks and social distancing. That's been a challenge. Please know, requiring masks and social distancing. The swimming pool is open and available on a reservations only basis only. The skate park is currently closed due to non-compliance with mask wearing and social distancing. Spread the love at Campbell's 44th annual Valentine 5K virtual fun run walk through February 21. Create your own 5K anywhere, anytime, virtually. Excuse me. For more information and to register, please visit campbellca.gov/recreation. The Campbell, Saratoga, and Cupertino Youth Commissions are collaborating to host their first ever Teen Kindness Week. This is really a neat program. Follow the Campbell Youth Commission's Instagram account at Campbell Youth Commission, all one word, Campbell Youth Commission, the week of February 15 to 19, to see how you can help spread kindness. Share your kindness stories at, Pound Teen Kindness Week. Donate today. Help support the Campbell Museum. These are unprecedented times, and the Campbell Museums are facing an uncertain future. Your donation will help keep the Campbell Museum's education programs, exhibits, and preservation going forward. For more information, please visit campbellmuseums.com. The Campbell Museums and the JFCS Holocaust Center present Herb, Learn His Story and Hear His Testimony of Survival on Monday, March 1st from 7 to 8:15 p.m. Herb was a hidden child during the Holocaust. His family escaped from Vienna to Belgium. Herb has shared his testimony on Zoom across the country. History at Home presents the history of Fort Ross on Friday, March 26th, so a little bit ways out, time to plan here. March 26th from 6 to 7 p.m. A Russian-American settlement on the Sonoma coast is presented by Igor Polshunk, Director of External Relations, Fort Ross Conservancy. Fort Ross is a former Russian establishment on the Sonoma coast and has been subject to archaeological investigation and is a California historical landmark. Registration is required for both of these museum events. Tickets are free to museum members, check on that, or $10 each. To register, please visit campbellmuseums.com. Lots of benefits for museum membership, so do check that out. The Campbell Museum Library offers extensive, oops, you got this next one, sorry. Celebrate Campbell Rich Heritage at Early Settlers Day, a virtual event on Wednesday, tomorrow, February 17th at noon. Carrie Perkins from the Campbell Museum will discuss the 175th anniversary of Campbell's coming to California, of the Campbell family coming to California. Updates on city business will also be presented. Register for free at campbellchamber.net. Okay, and lastly, the Campbell Library offers extensive virtual story time and classes weekly, including baby story time, kids art club, yoga for adults, and so much more. Check the online calendar for more information about classes, virtual book group discussions, and other programs at sccl.org. So we are trying to keep our community active. Long, exciting list of what's going on. Thank you. The next section of our meeting this evening is the consent calendar. Are there any council members that would like to pull an item from the consent? Councilwoman Landry?
Number 5.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, may we have a motion to approve the consent calendar items 2, 3, 4?
So moved.
We have a motion
Second.
by Vice Mayor Resnikoff and a second by? Was that Councilmember Landry? Second by Councilmember Landry. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Bybee,
Aye.
Councilmember Landry,
Aye.
Councilmember Lopez.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Resnikoff,
Aye.
Mayor Gibbons.
Aye. Thank you. Councilmember Landry, item number 5.
Yes, and I think Vice Mayor Resnikoff also had raised his hand about this. I just want to, I always get so choked up. I can't help this. I want to thank Margaret and Paula in our Campbell Police Department for their heroic actions that they took while attending the Garlic Festival in 2019. They attended to gunshot victims and assisted people trying to seek cover and have received the Medal of Honor from our police department. And I just want to put a special shout out to both of them.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Resnikoff?
Yeah, I'll comment too. Thank you. People should know that Agent Maggie Lights and Reserve Officer Paula Saladre, They literally put their lives on the line to help people who were injured, to help people who were not injured escape over a fence, while knowing there's an active shooter with reports of a second active shooter, which turned out not to be the case. So thank them very much for that. And I think it's also timely to note, this was a local event with a local person responsible. So people always say it can't happen here, but it can. And our officers are out there to help in this kind of situation. And I think we just saw it at Hamilton and Lee Sunday night, or early Sunday morning, I should say, a horrible situation with cars and gunshots and things like that. These things happen and our officers run toward them. So I think we owe them a lot of thanks for that and a lot of respect for what they do. And I'll just add last thing, I've had the opportunity, as I think we all have, to go in some ride-along since I've been a planning commissioner. So a number of them over the years. It was the very last ride-along I did where the officer stopped the car and said, I had to get you something first before we go in this call. He got out, went to the trunk, and came back and handed me a bulletproof vest. That's when I kind of becomes personal that they do this every day, and they're out there looking at that time for an active a loaded stolen weapon, and they're putting themselves in harm's way. And people don't see it too often, but I think we should recognize them for it. Thank these officers for Gilroy, and thank the rest of the Campbell PD for what they do every day as well.
Thank you. Councilmember Lopez and then Councilmember Bybee.
Thank you. I wanted to comment as well and offer my gratitude and congratulations to Agent Margaret Lights and Reserve Officer Paul Saladre. This is, as we know, the department's highest honor, and I can't imagine a situation someone more defending. I know that they saved lives that day with their actions, and truly are a credit to the department and our city. So I just want to offer my humble gratitude for their action.
Thank you. Councilmember Bybee.
Thank you. I also wanted to offer my gratitude and congratulations to the two officers. As Councilmember Lopez said, the Medal of Honor is the highest award that anybody can earn, and they're not given out very frequently. You have to earn that for life-saving efforts and heroic acts. And I just want to thank them and say that I really appreciate the work they do, not only in our community, but when they are called upon to interact with other jurisdictions. I'm proud to have them as members of our Campbell Police team. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would add my appreciation to Agent Margaret Litz and Reserve Officer Paula Shoulder, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that correctly, for their actions. To say the least, I certainly don't understand and would never take on the role of a police officer. And yet, as Vice Mayor Resnikoff said, you go into situations when everyone else like me turns around and goes the other way. So we thank you very much. You are a wonderful representative of the quality of Campbell Police Department. And I thank you very much and congratulations on receiving the department's highest honor. So thank you.
I'll make a motion
Yes, please.
that we adopt a resolution recognizing Agent Margaret Lutz and Reserve Officer Paula Schiraldi, I think I pronounced that close to right, for their heroic actions, life-saving efforts on July 28th, 2019 at the Gilroy Garlic Festival.
A second.
We have a motion by Councilwoman Landry and a second by Vice Mayor Resnikoff. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Bybee,
Aye.
Councilmember Landry,
Aye.
Councilmember Lopez.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Resnikoff. Vice Mayor Resnikoff.
Aye, I'm sorry, I thought it was not off of mute. Aye.
Mayor Gibbons.
Aye. Thank you very much. And we now move into the public hearings and introduction of ordinances portion of the meeting. Members of the public may be allotted up to 2 minutes to comment on any public hearing item. I'll just say the applicants and appellants and their representatives may be allotted up to a total of 5 minutes for opening statements and up to a total of 3 minutes maximum for closing statements. Items recommended for continuance are subject to council's consent at the meeting. Item number 6 is a public hearing to consider the application of Darko Darkovich for a major modification, PLN 2020-85, to a previously approved planned development permit, ZC 81-12, to allow construction of approximately 465 square foot single-story addition to an existing single-family residence and a 1,011 square foot detached building that will accommodate a new accessory dwelling unit on property located at 1409 Harriet Avenue in the PD Plan Development Zoning District. And do we have a presentation?
Yes, we do. Can everyone hear me?
Thanks, Naz.
If you could bear with me one moment, I will share my screen. Okay, so as mentioned, this item is a major modification to a previous plan development permit at 1409 Harriet Avenue. The project site is zoned PD or planned development and located at the corner of Harriet Avenue and Harriet Court. So this area here in the dashed red line, in 1981, this was a 6-lot development that was created through a zone change and a plan development permit. And the subject property, which is here in the solid red line, was already developed with an existing home, which was retained, and then the 5 other homes were constructed along with a private street. So as such, adding new square footage to a previously approved plan development permit constitutes a major modification, and that requires City Council approval. So here we have the site plan. Harriet Avenue is here along the front. Harriet Court is along the side with the existing single-family home here. So there is an existing detached garage in the rear that will be demolished and replaced with a new 2-car garage here at the front of the home. The driveway access would remain in the same location as it's currently going down along the side of the house and then to the back. So regarding the ADU, the previous understanding, which was applied to a similar project last year, was that any additional square footage on a planned development property, it would require a modification that goes to City Council. However, the code language is somewhat ambiguous, and upon further review, the city attorney has determined that, in fact, the ADU is not subject to the modification, and only the garage addition is. And that's the interpretation that we'll be applying moving forward. And so just to clarify, it's the garage that is, the garage addition that is for consideration tonight. And there is a line in the findings that will need to be struck, and I will point that out for you. So this project was reviewed by the Planning Commission at their January 26th meeting. Just prior to this meeting, and in response to comments from the Site and Architectural Review Committee, the applicant made some minor changes to better integrate the new garage with the existing home. And what's currently proposed is depicted in these perspective views shown here. And with these changes, the Planning Commission found the proposal is consistent with the Santa Moss Neighborhood Plan. So with that, the Planning Commission recommends that the City Council adopt a resolution approving a major modification, but with removal of the last sentence of finding number 6 pertaining to the ADU. Thank you. And I will go ahead and stop sharing. And I believe the applicant is here if there are any questions.
Thank you. So I'm going to see if I'm going to do this process correctly. I'm not sure I did last week. So we can ask staff questions at this point and then open the public hearing for the applicant. So are there any questions of staff? Councilmember Lopez.
Thank you. My question is for Bill. Should we clarify or update the language that was ambiguous in the ordinance? Will this be an issue going forward?
Well, to be honest, I don't think the language in the ordinance is really all that ambiguous. There apparently was a previous interpretation made by planning staff that was applied at a time that we had, right after we had just updated the ordinance, and I think it was misapplied at that time. I think we have it straightened out at this point.
Okay, thank you.
So as the phrase goes, the words are always important to read. So I will just say to Naz and others, I thank you for answering my questions this afternoon. I read something incorrectly, but I asked what I was missing and staff pointed it out. So thank you. It's always in the reading 10 times over. So the only other item I thought was of interest, but it may not be now, is that I was looking for a parking spot for the new ADU. And it's a tandem spot in the driveway in front of the new garage. So that was a surprise to me, but I'm gathering that that's not relevant given what Bill just said. Okay. Councilwoman Landry, sorry if you have a question.
Yeah, I think Councilmember Bybee was first, but I'll go ahead.
Sorry, I'm looking across the screen.
I didn't see a letter from Stack. Did they review the project or do they have to?
We notify them. They're on the notification that when we have an internal staff meeting, it just kind of shows the projects that come in. And we also sent out a courtesy notice and did the required notifications through the mail and the website, but we did not receive any comments.
Thank you.
Member Bybee.
So I didn't see the minutes of the Planning Commission included in our packet. So I'm just curious, was there any public testimony at the Planning Commission hearing?
No, there were no public comments.
Okay, thank you.
If there are no other questions from council, we will open the public hearing. And the applicant has up to 5 minutes to speak at this time. And I think we're going to let you in. You're unmuted.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to say, so.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming.
Yep.
And if you're satisfied where we are right now, you'll have a chance if something comes up to speak at the end as well.
Okay.
Is there any other person wishing to speak? Acting City Clerk?
Yes, Mayor Gibbons, we have Raja who would like to speak.
Yes, please. And you have 2 minutes, Raja.
Hey, I was originally not planning to speak, but based on the comments here, I live in the St. Thomas area and I was very active in the creation of the ADU law last year. 2 things. One was a question from Councilwoman Landry, if there is a letter from Stack. So is that a requirement for things to be done in St. Thomas area? Because if a council member brings up, it suddenly becomes a standard, right? So I'm trying to get a clarification on that. And the other thing is, if someone is adding an ADU, does it has to go to like notifying the people in the neighborhood and things? I think the state ADU law prohibits any delays because of that, right? So I'm just wondering why it was sent out to all the neighbors for approval and why it was not just a administrative decision. Thank you.
So I think we will let the Community Development Director or City Attorney answer the question. But staff did clarify in the presentation that this discussion is not about the ADU. It is about the garage addition, which is required by law because this was a PD, that it had to come back to council as a change to a PD. So And anyone else want to add? There's also the question of the stamp review. I would, Councilmember Landry, did you want to say something?
Oh, I just was commenting, when there's large development and new houses, the stack usually spends a little time reviewing and then submits a support letter or questions. So that's why I asked, as I'm used to seeing that. But I think because this was a small addition and mostly the garage, that's probably why there wasn't a letter. Naz, you can clarify or correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, it's not a requirement that they provide us with any feedback. They're always welcome to, and often they do, but in this case, we did not receive anything.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other comments from the public?
There are none.
Thank you. If there are none, we will close the public hearing and bring the discussion back to council for discussion or motion. Vice Mayor Resnikoff.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll just comment. I think that all in all, more ADUs is a good thing. So I like to see ADUs being built. I understand this went to SARC and SARC proposed some changes, which they implemented, which is good. And it's that 7-0 Planning Commission vote, which is also good to see. So I'm happy to support this one. I don't know if there's any other comments. If not, I would make a motion.
Try for the motion, and then we'll see if there are comments after the motion.
Okay, I'll move that the council take the following action to adopt a resolution recommending that the city council adopt a resolution approving a major modification PLN 2020-85 to a previously approved plan development permit ZC 81-12.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Vice Mayor Resnikoff, a second by Councilmember Bybee. But Councilmember Resnikoff, can you clarify your motion to include the rescission of the sentence in the motion?
Yes, to include that revision. And Bill, is that okay, Bill, that way?
Yes, it is the deletion of the last sentence of finding number 6.
Okay, so including exactly as the city attorney said.
Is that acceptable to seconder?
It is.
Thank you. So we have a motion. Second, is there any further comment or discussion? Seeing none, we'll do a roll call, please.
Councilmember Bybee,
Aye.
Councilmember Landry,
Aye.
Councilmember Lopez.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Resnikoff,
Aye.
Mayor Givens.
Aye. That's a unanimous decision. Thank you very much. And I don't think we have any further action on that one. So congratulations. We look forward to another ADU. There's 3 being built on my street alone. So thank you. And we will now move on to new business. This is item number 7. It is regarding the acceptance of the fiscal 2019-20 CAFR and the auditor's written communication on internal control. This does require a council vote. And we're going to have a presentation by Finance Manager Nori Bong.
Yes, ma'am. I'm going to share my screen right now. Can you see my screen?
There we go.
Great. Let's see. Okay. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, Vice Mayor, and City Council members. My name is Nort Vong, Finance Manager for the City of Campbell. I will be presenting item number 7, acceptance of fiscal year 2019-20 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, also known as the CAFR, and the auditor's written communication on the city's internal control structure. Per city municipal code, finance department is responsible for preparing the city's financial statements and coordinating an annual external audit each year. As you might recall, the city has new external auditors this fiscal year 2019-20. which is Eide Bailey. The City Council authorized an RFP for financial audit services back in November 2019. And through a competitive review process, Council approved the selection of Eide Bailey as the city's next external auditing firm back in April 2020. I'm happy to state that the transition to Eide Bailey has been smooth, and that is a testament to Ahmad, who you meet shortly. He's the audit partner on the engagement, as well as Joe Escobar, who's the audit manager, and the rest of their audit team. In the following slides, Ahmad will be discussing the audit process, the results of the audit, and any letters included with the staff report. But I wanted to go over some general fund highlights with you as well before we move on to that portion of the presentation. And so here's just some high-level general fund highlights for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2020. Revenues for general fund, excluding transfers, decreased by $3.4 million. And the five large revenue streams for the city, specifically for the general fund, are property tax, sales tax, other taxes such as TOT, charges for services, and licenses and permits. Property tax at fiscal year ending increased by $1.6 million. Sales tax decreased by $2.2 million. Other taxes such as TOT decreased by $1.6 million. Charges for services decreased by 1.2, and licenses and permits increased by 0.5 or $500,000. Expenditures for the general fund, excluding transfers out, increased by $1.9 million. And the makeup of that 1.9 is due to $1.1 million for public safety personnel costs, and an additional $535,000 for an increase to the fire services contract that we have with the county. In total, the general fund's fund balance decreased by $4.8 million at fiscal year end. $3 million was utilized from the city's emergency reserves, and an additional 1.8 was utilized from other applicable and allowable reserve funds such as CIPR, various capital project funds, encumbrances, and construction tax. And if there are no questions at the moment, I would like to pass this on to Ahmad to discuss the audit process and the audit results before we continue on.
Any questions? I don't see any. Yes, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Norit. Good evening, City Council. I am Ahmad Ghoraibe. I am the partner in charge of the audit, and with me is my manager, Joe Escobar. And we're here to answer any questions the City Council has any. Just a brief description of the audit process. The scope of the audit is to ensure that the financial statements are fairly stated. We do it over multiple stages. It's a planning stage, it's an interim stage, a final stage, and the stage related to the financial statement. In the planning and interim phase, it is a process in which we take a look at the controls. We look at the manner that you process receipts, the manner that you process disbursements, purchasing, purchase orders, payroll, HR functions. And then we wait for management to close the books and give us a finalized trial balance. And this process is a confirmation process in which we confirm the account balances that are reported on the financial statement. We confirm your sales tax, we confirm your property taxes, we confirm your debt, and work through the capital assets of various accounts that are reported on the financial statements, including the disclosures. And then at the end phase of the audit, we work with management on finalizing these financial statements in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted. They call them GASBs, and the city does send this comprehensive annual financial report to GFOA, which is an independent agency that also reviews these financial statements for compliance with the reporting standards. I'm pleased to let you know that we issued a clean opinion on these financial statements. We had no adjustments noted in the financial statements. As I mentioned before, the interim phase, it is a phase in which we look at the controls. We like to see segregations. We like to see review processes. and we noted no exceptions with respect to these processes. We encountered no difficulties. This is our first year doing the audit, and then at the same time, COVID came through, and we had to do this remotely. Surprisingly, as is the case with many clients, they actually did have the record in electronic format. Video conferencing and all of that was always available. So we worked with the city and city management throughout the audit, and we encountered no difficulty in the performance of the audit. And with that, I'll be more than happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for our auditors? Councilmember Lopez.
Thank you. Appreciate very much the report and the work on this. Thank you for that. And was very interested in especially some of the historical data and graphs that you put together. I just have a question about one of them. Especially as we're thinking about the economic health of the city. This is on page 132 of the report, 251 of the council packet. The unemployment rate, it looks like that's ending at 0%. I just want to make sure I'm reading that correctly. And if you could provide some context for
that. Can you please let me know which page numbers of the audit report?
132.
And you are looking at the unemployment rate? Yeah, so it's a declining. See here, it's a 10-year unemployment rate, and it's declining from 10% to you know what, that's the change in the unemployment from one year to the other. You can look at the table as opposed to the graph, and that kind of gives you some context. And I believe that 0.1 is the change in the unemployment rate.
I see. Okay, that makes much more sense. Appreciate it.
Sure.
I was still trying to find it. Okay, thank you. Anything else, Councilmember Lopez?
No, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, I think we're done. Thank you very much. I appreciated the contents of your letters and the results of your observations and assessments. Thank you. And now we turn it back to Nurit.
Yes. So I will share my screen once more. Okay, so staff went to the Finance Subcommittee on January 26, 2021. Committee members are comprised of Vice Mayor Resnikoff and Councilmember Bybee. We reviewed the CAF report with the committee, and the committee inquired about year-over-year changes in general fund revenues and reserve balances. Staff and Ahmad, we were able to answer the questions and provide answers to the Finance Subcommittee members. And as such, staff is coming before Council to recommend that the City Council accept the fiscal year 2019-20 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report and the auditor's written communication on the city's internal control structure. And at this point, I'd be happy to answer any additional questions you may have. Finance Director Will Fuentes is also available, as well as Ahmad.
Thank you. I think I would ask first either Finance Committee members, Vice Mayor Resnikoff or Councilmember Bybee, if you had any comments from your subcommittee meeting or otherwise.
I'll comment. And I think we made some brief comments at the last meeting, I think, but in the committee reports. So really the purpose of the Finance Committee was to receive the auditor's report. You see there were some questions we had along the way just to understand them as much as anybody else would have. But the real takeaway was that the report confirmed that the financial statements adhere to all generally accepted accounting principles, that there's a component there that reflects on management. Is management forthcoming, and does management help support the creation of this document? And that was a very solid yes. I think there were compliments from management, and there were no There were no real deficiencies, I remember, certainly no substantial deficiencies. I don't think there were any deficiencies or recommendations at all. And I think it's worth noting, I haven't been on the finance committee in probably 2 or 3 years, but I know going back 3, 4, maybe 5 years, there were some issues then. And there were some issues, not with any irregularities, but with some of the information flow, and there were some recommendations of better practices. This was very clean. And I think we said last time, it's a compliment to Director Fuentes, to you and your entire group. So everything went very smoothly, and the process apparently went very well, and the final result went very well. So we were happy to receive that report.
Councilmember Bybee.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to, as a matter of courtesy, acknowledge Joe Escobar also, who is in attendance tonight. He's part of the audit team, and he met with the subcommittee. So I just wanted to say hi and welcome to the city to both of you.
Good point. Thank you.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Any other questions? So I also want to appreciate that staff had the material in a format that you gentlemen both found to be more than acceptable, and so on and so forth, for what your role and responsibilities are. And that's a comfort level to the council to have these audits and to have your assessments. So I thank you for the transparency that your review provided to us and to council as a whole, city as a whole. So thank you very much. Congratulations, Will, and your team. Nicely done. So do we need a motion? Let's see, I need to open this up to public comments. Are there any public comments?
There are none.
I will close the public hearing and bring it back to council. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Councilmember, Vice Mayor Reznikov?
Right. I'll move that the City Council accepts the fiscal 2019-2020 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, or CAFR, and auditor's written communication on internal control structure and the audit process as submitted with this report.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Vice Mayor Reznikov and a second by Councilmember Bybee. If there are no questions on the motion, we will have a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Bybee,
Aye.
Councilmember Landry,
Aye.
Councilmember Lopez,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Reznikov,
Aye.
Mayor Gibbons.
Aye. Thank you. Well done, all. And we will now move on to a substantive discussion this evening, which is item number 8, the fiscal year 2021 mid-year financial update and budget adjustments. This would be a resolution and roll call subject to council discussion. And I would just like to make an entry comment for council and all those who are listening. The council and staff recognize the significance of these discussions, and we all take our responsibilities seriously and are looking for the best outcome for the city as a whole and all of our employees. So with that, we'll turn it over to Will. Are you beginning, or is it Brian? Will?
I am, yes. So I'm also just going to share the screen as well. So just give me 1 second on that. All right, I think you're all able to see the screen.
Yes.
Okay, great. And so I'm here tonight to go over item 8, to present the FY 21 mid-year report, and also to go through a recommended budget adjustments. So just to go through some key takeaways of the report. The key thing to note up front the key thing to note up front, the key thing to note up front is that the impacts of COVID on a Campbell and on our income are much more profound than were expected when the budget was adopted in June. And given the data at the time, it was the effects are much more than could have been expected. Given the data that we knew in June, because of the continued effects of COVID, we've seen our key income streams decrease from TOT to building permits, to our taxes, to our different charges, and it's really been decreases all across the board, and so in a total, compared to the adopted FY21 budget that was approved in June, we currently project that our income through June will be $7.5 million less than we expected. If you also take into account $160K deficit that was upfront, the total deficit that we need to address, it totals $7.6 million in a total. In terms of the economy in Campbell, in the Bay, and in the state and the country, the economy is certainly slowed a bit. The jobless claims are up, but the economy should also be helped by a stimulus that was approved in December. The cases of COVID are beginning to come down. People are also able to get their shots as well. We expect the cases of COVID right now to continue to decrease, and also Congress, they're also proposing currently additional aid that could help Campbell. It's not 100% assured, but it should go to a vote in the next 2 to 3 weeks. And although it doesn't fix all of problems, it could certainly be a thing that helps. So to conclude, with 6 months of data in December, the pictures a lot more clear than it was in June. We can certainly see that our income streams are again down, and we are able to project out through June, and so because the pictures, because the picture is clear, it's the correct thing to do now, to try to control our costs, to bring down the expenditure rate if we again, and so that it does equal our income, and also to ensure that the long term is also protected as well. So in coming to the proposed corrections tonight, we certainly upfront attempted to address the current year problem. We attempted to do it in a way that was equitable, and also equitable and equal, and took pieces from different took pieces from different items, so that we didn't experience all of the pain in any one spot. And at the core, we again are attempting to ensure that we're stable, both in the current year, but also in FY 22, and also outwards as well. In any reduction that we propose, we're also attempting to pull from the chart that we gave and discussed with council in January as well. So tonight, we've proposed some different budget adjustments. Council may choose to approve the whole thing without changes. They also could choose if they are able to identify changes tonight. You also could approve, but have them changes. If you aren't able to identify the changes tonight, we also can return again, or also if you do either approve or change tonight, there also can be actions that you do, or also changes that you choose to do down the road as well. And although we don't give a detailed cuts on personnel, we do give a proposed target that we are attempting to get council input on, and we can if council does agree, then we can return to council again to go through a detailed personnel plan. So at some point, I will turn it over. Okay.
Thank you, Will. You know, as was introduced, the budget shortfall we're really looking at is the 7.4 million in revenue shortfall plus a pre-existing deficit of 160. So the recommended actions that staff is recommending in table 2 in the staff report totals 7.6 million. And it's comprised of several different strategies to get you there. And there was a comment about equitable when we talk about corrections, and what we're talking about equitable, as you can see, we're not just looking at one area here to focus on to solve this problem. That we see this puzzle as having many pieces, and each piece of that puzzle may vary in size, and we may all disagree what size each piece may be. But the recommended corrections that's in the staff report and that are highlighted here attempts to strike that balance. And I'm not going to read each of these, but you see that the staff proposal contains a use of reserves of about 3 million. It has transfers from funds that we've combined there that are detailed in the staff report. We factored in the bargaining unit savings that was negotiated this year. Other things like OPED liability that was reduced and other reducing of expenditures in addition to vacancy savings. The remaining piece of that puzzle would leave labor reductions to $772,000. And I mentioned that is a fourth quarter target. So when we're trying to close this budget gap needs to be closed by June 30th. And so the comment about labor reductions at 772,000 is our goal for this to achieve to close this fiscal year. That's not an annual amount. Next slide. So as Director Fuentes introduced this, there was a 2020 stimulus bill that we believe that we're going to pursue potential funding for the theater for loss of revenue in the range of $100,000 to $390,000. We don't yet know what that looks like, but we have been attending the meetings and we are awaiting the application period so that we can submit for that. And then was also mentioned was a new stimulus bill. Now, this is anything but assured. It is not guaranteed. It still is going to take a vote to get this passed, and it's going to go through a political process. So the numbers may change, but there is a potential for approximately $7 to $8 million in new stimulus bill that has not been announced yet. And you know, I bring that up because the question comes up, how does that really solve our problem? What does that do to solve our problem? And, it certainly will go a ways to help the immediate need, but it's not going to solve the structural issues. If our revenues are less than expenditures and they continue to be in next fiscal year, we're going to have the same problem next year unless we make these reductions. And so, while the stimulus bill sounds like a great solution, it's not probably going to be entirely the solution that we need. And once that gets approved, if it does get approved, we would come back to council with whatever scenario and touch base with the council on ways to proceed with the new information, with the correct dollar amount and a projection of what that would look like. But because that's not guaranteed at this time, we're not banking on that. It is not included in our calculations. It would be speculative and probably not a conservative approach. I would describe it as risky to bank on that right now. So we are trying to take the most prudent, conservative approach. But I want you to keep that in the back of your mind for future discussions as well. And as was mentioned earlier too, the recommendations in table 2 in the staff report are merely recommendations. It's one way to put the puzzle together. We think it uses a prudent amount of various reserves and other strategies so that not one area is taking the hit for the reductions. But we recognize that there may be disagreement by the council on use of reserves or other adjustments as appropriate. So we're prepared this evening to talk through that and get direction from the council on what exactly is that right mix and how we put that puzzle together. Hopefully tonight we walk away from this understanding of what piece of the puzzle labor has to bear. And we will be meeting with council in closed session about how that implementation of that labor piece would be put into place. And that would be a future discussion, not for a discussion this evening. This evening, we're trying to identify the target. And then last, I wanted to mention long-range forecasting, because in order to really get at what the structural deficit is, looking at next year's budget and what we need to do next year. We have to do some forecasting, and our finance department's in the middle of that process to do that. And as we proceed with our budget process, we will have that refined. We will be able to identify the structural deficit so that next year, this time, we're not doing the same exercise. We hope to make these cuts once, and these cuts once only, in that it will fix not only the problem this year, but as Director Fuentes said, it really sets us up for sustainable budgets for the coming years as well, structurally. And so you'll be seeing long-range forecasts as we develop the budget for next year in the coming weeks and months. Next slide. So if approved, the proposed adjustments would account for budgeted revenue decrease of $7.48 million. And those are shown in attachment D of the staff report. But those totals is in addition to the existing $160,000 deficit that was in the approved budget. And so your total deficit reduction it contained in the recommendations really 7.6 million that we're suggesting. And we're available to go through those details of attachment 2 this evening, if that's the council's discretion, have questions on those and get feedback on our strategy. So with that, we're recommending the council consider the proposed resolution, provide direction to staff. We'll either modify that resolution as appropriate or take council direction to bring back an item at a future date if the resolution can't be modified this evening. And with that, I know Director Fuentes is available. I'm certainly available. I know all of our department heads are also on this Zoom call. So if there's department specific questions with regard to reductions, they can step in and help answer those as well.
Thank you, Brian, and City Manager Leventhal and Finance Director Fuentes. Could one of you be able to pull up table 2 as a slide so that we can talk about that when we get there?
I can, yeah. Just give me 1 second on that and I will.
Yeah, we don't need it right this second, but we will in a minute. Thank you. With my colleagues' indulgence here, I did discuss some approaches on how to tackle this discussion with the city manager. So I'll give you an outline of what we are thinking. So it's clear that staff is asking for direction to close the 2021 budget deficit based on this mid-year analysis. And they outlined 4 choices for us. What they're proposing, modifying what they're proposing, back with some different strategies, or approve and add. So those are the 4 choices before us. The approved 2021 budget incorporates reductions of 4.3 million. It also included a $1.3 million deficit. Due to adjustments shown in table 1 in the staff report, the carryover deficit remaining is the number mentioned by Will, which was 160,844. So that's the carryover deficit. No reserves were used to reach that number. The information provided in attachment A defines the $7.4 million as the additional projected shortfall for fiscal year 2021. The projected revenue decreases are shown in attachment A. The shortfall, yeah, is that right? Yeah. The total shortfall for 2021, as you've just heard, is $7,645,222. Frankly, it took me a while to understand what the difference was between the 7.4 million and the 7.6. So that's why everyone is emphasizing it. And table 2 lists the staff's recommendation to address it. Together, the initial reduction of 4.3 million and the current projected deficit combined for an annual deficit from a normal year with full revenue and full services is 11.7. So that speaks to why we need to have this long range strategic look at our budget. So to get through this and fit in with our appropriate public comment format, I'm suggesting that we have a discussion in 4 parts. The first 2 parts are for Q&A of staff, and the following would be public comment. And then we would then come back to the roundtable discussion, and then finally confirm what we agree on and next steps. So if that makes sense, I'll just do part 1, which is review, comment, and questions on the revenue assumptions. Does anyone have any comments about the revenue assumptions that are in the staff report? No one has any comments? Okay, Councilmember Bybee?
You're stating comments. I thought we were asking questions. Are we at the
Sorry,
question?
I beg your pardon. I'm trying to, comments, questions, yes.
So questions.
Any questions about the revenue assumptions?
I don't have any, but I just want to be clear that we're talking about questions right now and not comments.
Sorry, yes. Okay. So I have to figure out how to do this here. So the staff report. The staff report for me, since I'm the only one with questions. As I said last spring, that I'm trying to be an optimistic pessimist, but obviously we were not conservative enough in our assumptions last spring. So I'm very nervous about the decrease in the sales tax, going down to only 1 million more. I would just offer that I'm concerned as we go through and evaluate what our bottom line number is. I'm concerned that the sales tax reduction is not enough. Saying that we're going to end up with 13.2 million when in a normal year we have 15.7. That's our largest tax, second largest tax resource. And I think we need to be very, very careful that we don't overestimate the sales tax. Same thing is true with the franchise fees. I appreciate there's a decrease. It was interesting to see the garbage and the cable, the garbage being the largest decrease. I just am concerned that we're not assuming enough of a decrease going forward, because buildings are not going to be utilized as much, and restaurants and other businesses aren't going to be using it. The TOT going down another 1.5 million, I think is optimistic. So I just, to say that our shortfall is projected now to be the 7.4 less income, I would just offer that I think that's still too optimistic. I don't know if anyone else has any assessment of that. Councilwoman Landry, and then Vice Mayor Reznikov.
I do think it's a little bit optimistic. I've been concerned now for several months. Yes, vaccines are coming out, but things aren't quite going to be back to normal for quite some time. So I do think that it is a little bit too much optimistic. I do hear clearly what the city manager is saying is this cut right now is for this fiscal year and the last quarter, and we're going into the next fiscal year, and how much more are we going to have to cut then?
So I'm going to try and be respectful of Councilmember Bybee's question. I'm trying to ask the question.
Oh.
I'm trying to ask the question. No, it's me. I'm trying to ask the question.
You were commenting, so I commented.
I know. I was trying to not comment in that sense. I was trying to say, I am questioning staff on those numbers. I don't know how else to say it, other than the fact that I have questions about those values. Vice Mayor Resnikoff?
No, my point was just to say, I think we're getting into discussion and we need to hold that for public discussion, right? That was my.
Okay, all right, so okay. Then let me try this, and if this doesn't work, then we'll move on. The second intention was to ask questions about table 2. Can we pull table 2?
I can, yes. 1 second on that, please.
Thank you.
All right, are you able to see?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So does any member of council have any question about the items listed on table 2? Okay,
Yeah, Mayor, I have my hand raised.
where are you? There you are. Thank you, Councilmember Lopez.
Thank you. My question is about the decision to make this a flat $1 million proposed draw from each fund, as opposed to doing percentage or some other method. So I'm just wondering about the why the $1 million was chosen as a flat amount for all 3 funds.
I'm not sure we understand your question.
I'm looking at the top 3 recommended actions, the drawing from 3 different reserve funds. And so I'm wondering about the decision to make that a flat amount for each, as opposed to tying it to something, some other amount or percentage of the fund or something else. So just wondering where that came from.
I can address that. So the $1 million amount from each of the all 3, there wasn't any real art put in to it. The thing that we were attempting to do is to try to pull about an equal amount from each adjustment shown in table 2. That could hardly be it could certainly be a different amount, either up or down. But when we were putting table 2 together, $1 million from each of the all 3 seemed to be a good approach, so that you didn't take too much from any account, and again did it in a way to spread it outwards.
Councilmember Lopez, is that an answer to your question? Is staff just decided to take $1 million out of each?
Yes, it is, and I'll reserve further comments when we get to this question.
Okay, I think Vice Mayor Resnikoff is next, and then Councilmember Bybee.
Thank you. No, and that's a real good question, a good observation. So my question to Director Fuentes, but this is part of these reserve uses, and the quantity are part of what we can tweak here if we want. Is that correct?
Right.
Correct. Yes, it is.
Okay, because I think I won't avoid a statement other than we're going to get into things like priorities. All reserves are not equal, so we'll have that discussion. I think it's a valid point. Thank you.
Agree. Councilmember Bybee?
So I have several questions. I had submitted some questions and didn't get my answers, and then I have a couple more questions relating to Table 2. The first one is the $749,000 from the excess corporation yard sale proceeds. Is that money currently in the CIP and is just sitting there? And is there a plan, if the council were to approve the use of that, is there a plan to put that back into the CIP?
Currently, the whole amount is under the CIP fund, but we've not identified a CIP project that it would go to, and we also talked to the public works department, and they did agree that if we were to return it to the, if we were to return this amount to the general fund, that there would still be enough to help to pay for any CIP items that we may need to do out of the courtyard over the next 2 to 3 next 2 to 3 next 2 to 3 hires or so.
So is there a preliminary plan at this point for some type of a project in the future, or is it just kind of possible?
It's a tentative plan, but I also will defer on the details to public works director Urso.
Yeah, thank you, Will. I can chime in, and I've got a really funky camera tonight, so I don't know what's going on with that. So maybe I'll start talking and turn my screen back off. But just to update everybody on the origins of that money, as you will recall, the city was approached by 2 developers on either end of the courtyard. One was the Robeson project, and one was the St. Anton project, and kind of the corners of the yard on each end were sold to the 2 developers, and it yielded about 1.1 million, I think, in total. And the thought with that was that if land was to be lost at the courtyard, we would then have to invest in improvements to make the yard more efficient. And some of that work has been done at a very basic level with regard to how to the storage area has been reconfigured. And then the next project to move forward on that was to replace a modular building with almost more like a mobile home that houses the signals and lighting group and the parks lead workers. And for those of you that have been out at the courtyard, that's that mobile home looking structure when you first enter the yard. And that structure has really passed the end of its useful life. And so that was something that we were looking to replace as the first order of business. Beyond that, there was to be an assessment of the existing admin building and the shops building to see what we could do to bring those buildings up to current code, or if necessary, either perform a certain level of addition or restructuring. We have not done any of that work. All we've done so far is other than the reconfiguring and improving the storage area, is we've got some preliminary work done on the replacement of that modular building. So that was one thing that we were hoping to complete, but again, all things are fair under this scenario.
Okay, thank you. The next question has to do with the $154,000 for the recreation donation fund. So what is the purpose or the intended use of those funds? And where do those funds sit right now?
Currently, they're under their own fund. They aren't under the general fund. But when the recreation fund was put together to accept different donations that came in over a time to either expand what the recreation department did, or also to help to pay for a current cost. It really didn't need to be put under its own accounts and its own fund. It could have all just been put into the general fund. So the thing that we're proposing is that we take it from its own fund, put it into the general fund to help you defray our current costs. And if there are any other details about the rec fund, I'll also defer to a director of director of so.
Well, I also have a follow-on question to that. So if an individual makes a donation to the city recreation department as a donation, and there's some expectation that it's going to be used toward, an improved service or an enhanced program or for whatever purpose, is there any legal implication to transfer those funds to the general fund to be used as operating funds?
No. I mean, we do attempt to use the funds for how they were intended, and for the purpose, but it still could have just went into the it still could have went into the general fund to help to pay for the whole department.
Okay.
I can
The
help
next question.
if
The
you
next,
go ahead.
I'm sorry.
I was just going to help clarify a little bit too, that I think these were in working with the finance department to understand this fund were designated donations, and we had budgeted for what those donations were. And this fund, the way it was set up, the way Director Fuentes is saying, is that it shouldn't have gone into like this separate fund and been held there. It should have just gone directly into the general fund on those designated fiscal years. So we're just correcting it and moving forward in this manner.
Okay, thank you.
So, Councilmember Bybee, may I just add a clarification to this? I still understand that this money was donated for specific purposes, whether it was put in the right fund or not. I think Councilmember Bybee's question I share is had an intended purpose. And by putting it in the general fund and reallocating it, we are no longer meeting that commitment.
We already met the commitment, because the way in previous years, and this is probably prior to Director Fuentes too, that's how far back the last one I think went, is that in the way we did our budget prior, that the expense or whatever was being done was already designated in our existing budget. And then the donations came in. And so the transfer just never happened between this fund and that to kind of offset those costs.
Okay, thank you. My next question has to do with the excess workers' compensation transfer of $1 million. And our financial policies state that this reserve needs to be maintained at a level deemed adequate to meet projected liabilities as determined by an actuarial evaluation to be conducted every 2 years. Have we done an actuarial evaluation to make sure that that's a reasonable level? And when was the last one done?
A dead one, and we just did it again in the end of December, and we do one every 2 years.
And is that done by an independent actuarial firm?
It is, yes.
And then my last question has to do with the last item and the labor reductions. I'm still not clear about that process. You know, any reduction in staffing usually is equivalent with a reduction in programs. And in my view, the council hasn't had that discussion yet. And so I guess I'm if you could discuss what the next steps are, who's going to determine whether we have program cuts and we have staff cuts. I just not clear about how that component is going to work.
Let me try to attempt to answer that, Will, if I can. So the idea is that we identify the target this evening. That becomes a point that staff needs to figure out how to implement that target. And the implementation of that inevitably is going to contain a portion that affects labor. And for that discussion, that will be held in closed session of the council. And so what we would anticipate is if we get direction this evening on the target amount, we would be meeting with the executive team and department heads over the next week to try to come up with that using that service matrix that was provided to you previously and applying that to the target and coming up with a recommendation to address labor's impact and the impacts on labor with the council in the closed session and get your direction either to amend that, change that, or accept that proposal by staff. But that would be a closed session discussion.
Okay. Thank you. That's it for my questions.
Okay. Any other questions? Councilwoman Landry?
Yeah, I'm still trying to follow a couple things. So, Natasha, the donation money, from what you're saying, is that it really went into the wrong fund originally, and that this is just a transfer back. So nobody's donation was given away to some other, like to the general fund, right? Every donation was applied where it needed to go.
I think previous leadership from finance segregated the donations into a very specific fund balance. And I think there was, as those donations came in, they were designated for something. Our budgets then would be given the expense line to make that, but it was coming from the general fund and not from this actual fund balance, is the way I am understanding it. And either Director Fuentes or Nora can step in if he's still on the phone, because we've kind of dug through it to try to identify what it was. And it was, they're outdated is really what it comes down to. But every time a donation comes in that's for a specific item within our budget, there's an adjustment done in our budget to accommodate that. And it seems that historically the transfer wasn't made at the end of the fiscal year to accommodate that. So these are just cleaning up some fund balances so that it's more in line with what's there, and moving forward to do it the way that Director Fuentes is currently saying, that it just simply goes into the general fund because it's being done that fiscal year.
So if I gave my $10 to a program, my $10 went to that program.
Correct.
Yes. Okay. Then the next one was what Council Member Bybee was talking about. I asked this question this afternoon to the city manager. So right now we're talking about potential labor discussion, but we're not talking programs. And so I think the city manager worded as the chicken and the egg, which comes first. And so we're talking about one thing, but if we want to say labor concessions, then we're saying, but I'm asking, what program does that go with? For instance, if you told me the senior nutrition program would go away if you don't make this cut, then I would say, I don't want the senior nutrition program to go away, but how does that equate to labor? And so I see Council Member Bybee had some of the similar questions.
And my understanding moving forward is that department heads would be able to provide a methodology into how we would present labor reductions. And that discussion would be done with you and the city manager to determine if, this methodology works for you and you're comfortable with moving forward. Because yes, in our department, it is very directly related to programs and services that our community wants and needs. And so those will be council decisions on how to address that. And so, moving forward, if it is that labor reductions happen and I'm given a designated amount, my goal is to have option A and option B for our city manager to present, and council then has the option to kind of go through and really understand what the methodology was that I'm presenting for my department, what the impacts are, and what programs and services will or will not continue if those are the circumstances we're faced with.
And Susan, just to put your mind at ease a little bit, if we're using that prioritization matrix from the January meeting, the senior nutrition is shown as an essential service in that matrix.
I appreciate that. That was the example that popped to my head right away, because we had that whole conversation before about cutting money to that specific
Well, and
program.
since senior nutrition was mentioned, I thought I'd just be clear on senior nutrition.
Okay, so again, I go back to, it's hard to make some decisions when I don't know what services are going to be cut, if that, you know, how they tie together with each other, but okay.
Councilmember Resnikoff, any questions?
Not at this point.
Everyone else? Okay, so I have some questions, and I would like to, I was the city manager, I was trying to structure the conversation to help lead it to answer some of the questions that Councilmember Landry and Bybee asked about the future. So trying to stick with asking just questions now. It's my understanding that staff is presenting this scenario as a possible approach. So I have questions. So the same question as Councilmember Bybee about the yard proceeds. If Director Caperso is saying that about $350,000 has been spent on whatever improvements, was the intention, I remember the two projects, I remember having the money being assigned to the courtyard to make important improvements there. Is it correct to say that that money is needed to make improvements to the courtyard?
Well, it depends on when those improvements are needed. I mean, it's general fund money. So if you do not reserve that money and there's a project that comes to the table, then we would have to come up with the funding for that project. Understanding Director Caperso and Director Fuentes in their comments, it sounds like there is some idea to deal with the portable building out there, but not a greater project even on the short term or medium term.
Okay, so let me try and ask my question a little bit more clear. I understood that the money from the sale of those two parcel slices was assigned to the courtyard for badly needed improvements. And this is going back 6-7 years now. That is money that was at the time specifically set aside for corporation yard improvements that were identified and needed at the time, and there was a fund to take the money and put it in. And some of those improvements have been made, some of them are in process. So my question is all of this money needed for the corporation yard? What is the risk of shifting the money, and how would it be replaced?
Well, Brian, if you'd like me to step in on that, I can tell you that that as you are, I think as you're assuming, not every project is programmed out. So that there are certainly projects out there that would be needed. My perspective on that is that anything beyond the current modular is probably not a project that will be needed within the next 5-year planning period. So I think that would give us the opportunity to reprogram those funds, repurpose those funds to help bridge the funding gap, and then maybe over the next 5 to 6 to 7 years, we could develop a plan to help replenish those funds. I don't see that we would have a project out there to take on any of the larger improvements that I described, because much like those same deficiencies, we have those deficiencies all across the inventory, whether they include City Hall or the community center. And so I would tell you that those probably are not what I talked about, the admin building and the shops project would not rise to the level of priority for what we're seeing in the modular building. And I think we would have the opportunity to help build that fund back, maybe as the economy and our capital fund improves. But I think it's something that we could certainly consider repurposing that portion of the funds in the shorter term, and then we would keep an eye on helping those funds get replenished over the longer term. That's my perspective on that. It'd be interesting to hear if Brian and Will see it differently, but that's
So-
where I would be coming from.
Thank you. So let me ask the question yet again. Have you taken the money for the modular and any else that is relatively urgent out so that the full 749,000 odd can be taken? Or do you need more of that money?
We have allocated enough money to complete the modular project out of it. The short answer is yes. The 740 excludes the improvements to the modular.
Okay. Okay, thank you. The next question we talked about is the recreation donation fund. I think that that's been addressed. Don't understand the CPO, CPCEA net savings of 87,000. I got lost on what that is.
All right, I can address that one. Under our payroll costs that went into the adopted budget, we assumed that our CPOA and our CPCEA payroll costs for pay would increase by 3%. In the a special adjustment for a CPCEA that went through in September, it did equal a bit over 3%. But the CPOA adjustment to pay that just went into effect in January was less than 3%. So due to the compensation adjustments that were in the MOU used compared to the payroll costs and different assumptions that were put into the adopted budget. We do show a small cost decrease of about 88. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. My next question is along, I think, also other previous questions. The proposed RCS fee-based program and event reduction, non-labor. So that's programs without labor. So to me, I don't know how we can support that number. I looked at the detail, I saw what you put in there and why, but it's awfully hard to support that number without understanding the labor associated with it.
So
you want to address that, Natasha?
yeah, I'll do my best without exact numbers in here. So this the assumptions that were made when the development of this budget was that by December, we would have some sort of, on-campus activity in classrooms with low percentage occupancy, and that has not happened. And so we have been extra conservative at this mid-year that through the rest of this fiscal year, we're going to have very limited in-person, in-classroom type activities. So that means room rentals, things like that. So some very moderate staffing for temporary personnel, because majority of our temporary personnel has been reduced already. Some of the big items from this is that we had the theater coming in at like 50% capacity after the new year. And we have simply zeroed out everything in that budget for the rest of this fiscal year. So there's some large reductions from in there. We also have some reductions because again, room rentals was another one where is a big ticket item for us in revenue reductions. And so, those are where those ones are coming from. So expenditures, everywhere that a program isn't coming, there's an offsetting expenditure that's associated with it. So that's where we're at with those ones.
Yeah. I'll just thank you. I mean, I did read your detail and I do follow it, but so what we're being asked to do is approve by resolution these budget shifts. And some of them are very hard to do without understanding the corresponding staffing implications. So, okay. The next one I have is the same thing with Public Works. I'll just say it's in the details, but the proposed community development reductions, it's the same thing. And then the other one I have is the additional vacancy savings. Council has not agreed to that list. So I don't think it should be included here as additional vacancy savings. I think council has asked for a proposal on staffing in various departments. So to assume the additional vacancy savings provided in, I think it was table attachment B, or one of those, D maybe, I don't think we can agree to at this point. At least I can't agree to it. So what I was trying to do with this in asking questions, I am intending to try and understand which line items here I can agree to and which ones I can't. So, okay. So if there are no other questions, okay. I'll close the questions and open it to public comment. And Acting City Clerk, do we have public comment?
We do. We have Nicholas Capello.
And how many do we have?
He's the only one.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, this is Diana Capello and Nicholas Capello.
Hello. Thank you for coming and speaking, and you have 2 minutes, please.
Thank you. We just wanted to show our support for all of you making these tough decisions. I know it's hard to decide on a budget when you don't know the details. I wanted to help fill in the details for you. My husband was one of the most recent hired and would be one of the most susceptible to being fired in any kind of staff reduction. And we have a baby coming in 5 weeks. So we're really anxious to see how this pans out. And we were hoping to suggest an alternative. I haven't heard spoken yet, but working in tech as I do, I've seen other companies give an equal pay decrease to all employees rather than lay off staff. And I didn't know if that was on the table, but I just wanted to put it out there. And that would help, with Nick being in the Parks Department, when you have all these wonderful programs and this new playground that you put out, you won't have the offensive graffiti. You'll have clean bathrooms, no used needles. if there's no public works people to keep that new park clean, children like ours wouldn't want to use it. So we're hoping you consider the ramifications and of all of those details that aren't yet laid out. Want to add anything?
Very much. I appreciate your comments. I don't know if everyone knows that I actually worked for the city back in the early 90s, and I did lose my job at the city because of cutbacks and closures of redevelopment agencies. So this is very close to my own life. So we're not, all of us are taking all of this very seriously, and thank you for your suggestion. Okay, if there are no other public comments, seeing none, we'll bring it back to the council for discussion. And again, I'm going to try and structure the discussion to help us get through it. So why don't we try again with the idea of breaking the comments into sections. My hope was that we could have very simple conversations on the assumptions for the budget revenue reductions, and then some comments on the table 2 budget adjustments, and then move into more of a roundtable discussion of where we are and what we might like to have staff do, and then conclude with a what we do agree on and what the next steps are. That's kind of what I was trying to structure here. If that makes sense, can we try that? Okay. So does anybody besides me have comments on the assumptions about the revenue shortfall? Councilmember Lopez.
Yeah, I can keep it fairly brief. I share many of those concerns, and it's not, you know, we're speaking about this quarter, of course, but concerned about the long-term recovery and how that impacts us. So just want to make sure we're taking some of those considerations into account.
Thank you. Councilmember Bybee.
I agree that the sales tax, we really need to be more conservative on that because we just don't know how quickly, you know, there's going to be an upturn in the economy and an increase in the sales tax. And I would caution on the transient occupancy tax. There, you know, a lot of our hotels are tied to business travel and some leisure travel for people that are coming to events that are in and around the city on weekends. And, you know, we're just not having events at this point. And the workforce and the telework idea is, you know, gaining momentum, and there's less people traveling on business. It's all being done by Zoom. So I think we really need to be cautious on the TOT.
Thank you. Councilwoman Landry.
So are we on to table 2 now?
No, we're talking just about the revenue.
I would agree with both the previous members speaking. The work from home, work from distance, visit from distance over Zoom, you know, hotels are not going to be back where they used to be, I don't think, at least not for quite some time. I stated earlier, we need to be so conservative on the sales tax number. You know, we had projections before that things were going to pick up, and now they haven't. And I don't want to have to keep coming back here and having these conversations because we weren't conservative enough.
Thank you. I would just inject into the conversation that we're talking between now and July 1st. So we're talking now until July 1st and what the dynamic of the environment is going to be. Councilmember, Vice Mayor Reznikov?
Yeah, I agree. Your point on July 1st is a good one. I mean, I don't think that we're going to see drastic changes until July 1st. So those two sales tax TOT are certainly going to be flat, if at best, probably. Beyond July 1st, I would just say, you know, conservative is good, but let's try to be realistic, because this, you know, this is all going to rely, a lot of what's going to happen next year is all going to rely on vaccination schedules and rollouts and things like that. I think that's going to be huge. None of us know where that's going to be, right? We've heard April, everybody at one time will have one, but that's hard to believe at this point. Maybe true. When we get into discussion of next year, I'm going to urge us not to be so conservative that maybe we go overboard and do things we didn't have to do. But I think for the next 3 months, 4 months, we're talking about sales tax and TOT are not going to certainly increase. So I have more comments when we get into reserves and expense reductions. That's what I want to add.
So just on the revenue assumptions, I think we need the long range projections. We need to have an understanding of the outlook, because looking at these revenue areas, you know, we really need to know what the economic outlook is. We're all talking about TOT in particular. So I think I would ask staff to provide us with more information on the long range for this deficit reduction effort, as well as the next budget we're working on. And I ask that because I believe that the sales tax projections of $13.4 million, I think it is, 13.2 million, is too high. And I did a little math, and if our normal sales tax is 15.7 from 2019, and we're now at 13.2, that means that our second largest revenue source goes from 26% down to 22% of our general fund budget. That's a huge hit. And frankly, I think the projections are too high. I really think the projections for sales tax are too high, as others have said. I think the franchise tax fees are also too high. I definitely think the TOT is too high. A couple of hotel chains have now filed for bankruptcy, and they're major chains. They're not minor one mom and pop hotel, boutique hotels. So I would ask, I would say that the staff number of 7.4 to 7.6 is too conservative, is too high. I think it needs to be increased. I was trying to be the optimistic pessimist last go around, and frankly, we were just too optimistic, and we can't. I am not at all comfortable being optimistic at this point. And I'll say something else when we get to table 2.
Madam Mayor, can I address the comments on the projection? Just
yes, and then Councilmember Lopez.
I want to clarify that when you're looking at attachment B in the staff report, attachment 8B and those projections, those are based on actual real numbers that we have after 6 months. So these aren't staff's guess anymore.
Yeah, we know.
Where we were earlier in the year, we were speculating. Now we know based on real trends, and that's what we've given you. We haven't fudged these numbers. These are actual based on.
I know. But
so
as the report says, it doesn't directly address the shutdowns in December and January.
So my point being, these are based on real numbers, and if the council would like us to, then we'd look for some direction of what to revise those to. Because we'd just be speculating at this point and guessing what would meet your target. So if the council wants us to, I would suggest that perhaps the council gives us a target for what those, gives some order of magnitude of what you're thinking when you say it's too conservative. That doesn't give me an order of magnitude. Are you talking 10% more, 20% more? You know, in order for us to address that, we want to get at actual real numbers.
So clarify for me, I may be misunderstanding, but the projections are that, they're projections. They're not real. They're projections.
they're based on 6 months of history. And so they're based on what we know today, 6 months of experience. We didn't have that even a month ago. The December numbers were coming in the third week of January, and that's when we first started reporting those. So everything that we were talking about in the fall of saying it's not time to amend the budget yet, we're not sure, is because we're in a position to really kind of speculate. One person would say this, another person would say that. We were trying to find somewhere that was prudent in the middle. But these numbers that you see, these projections, are based on our actual experiences of 6 months of history. So if what you're telling us is the last 6 months aren't indicative of the next 6 months, then I would agree with you. And then the question would be, how do we speculate what that number is? Because that's simply what we would be doing.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification, and we will come back to answer the question. Basically, are the past 6 months an appropriate reference for the next 6 months? Councilmember Lopez?
Thank you. I'll just make 2 brief points. One is what, Mayor, I echo I definitely support long range planning and different scenarios but I would just caution against overconfidence in any projection when you're looking at long range estimates. I think that's if anything that this crisis has taught us, it's that uncertainty. So even if we get that, I'd still not be confident in the long range. So and the second point I'll just make is while I think we can always be more conservative and look at alternative scenarios in terms of the long range, I have a little bit more confidence as we look to the next quarter and this fiscal year. And I know we'll get into we'll have later discussions on the long term, but do you think that we may while we can ask questions about the numbers, have a little bit more confidence in the short term?
Thank you. Vice Mayor Reznikov?
Yeah, thank you. So I think we do need to have the discussion of where we see 6 months going flat, increasing, decreasing is important. But Brian, I had a specific question. Do the projections take into account the ability of businesses to delay some of those sales tax payments? What we got in the first 6 months may have been coming from the prior quarter, right? So that comes from the prior fiscal year. It's paid in, but now some payments can be delayed. Is that factored in? So if I understand it right, if sales taxes were equal in Q1, I'm sorry, say first half and second half, if you could delay paying them, it's not like property tax where we're guaranteed a stream. If they're delayed paying in, we'll be delayed paying to us. Is that correct? And if that's the case, is that factored into this projection for the 6 months?
Yes, I think that is the case. And the December figures for sales tax do account for any of those delays in what we received. We haven't gotten detailed analysis of how much of that reduction is because of delayed payments, but that is factored into the calculation.
It's important to know because the first half of the first quarter of that being, may not have been impacted by that, right? So if you saw a dip in Q2, how much is it from an overall dip in sales tax versus sales tax accrued but never paid? And that trend should continue for another 3 to 6 months.
You also remember first quarter was more severely impacted as some of those sales tax figures from last fiscal year because those businesses were shut down completely.
Right, true.
And so some of that all balances out. But
okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Okay, so we'll come back at the last point and see what conclusions we can reach on the question of projections, the past 6 months versus the next 6 months, and if not, what percentage? I think that's the question will be asked by staff. The second discussion is table 2. And does anyone want to summarize any items here that they are or are not comfortable looking to what staff is asking? And council actually needs to. Staff is asking to have a resolution allocating fund transfers of a certain amount, whatever that is. Is there anything on this list that council members are comfortable putting into a transfer at this time versus needing more information or not supportive of? Councilwoman Landry?
I'm going to go to Councilmember Lopez's comment earlier of why is there an even $1 million across 3 funds versus evaluating the total amount of that fund and or a percentage of it. I'm having a hard time seeing that we can use $1 million out of PERS reserve when we know PERS costs are a substantial chunk of our budget. I also, the same thing with the workers' comp fund. And then the third one was, I'm sorry, I can't find it right now. But yeah, I don't see why it's $1 million straight across the first 3 items when each fund is going to have a different, some have like 1.2 million left or 2.6 million. Just seems like there could be a better number in those 3 categories. And I'm very concerned about the PERS and the workers' comp.
Okay, would you be accepting of all the numbers in all of those items?
The whole list?
Yes. We're being asked tonight to accept, reject, or modify this list.
I would say modify the list. And there's some funds, well, we already asked about the recreation donation fund, so that one I don't see the number changing. Things like excess CIP back to the general fund, that to me seems like that is what it is. It's not a whole lot of money. There are some non-labor reductions in public works and legal, but again, that's not a huge chunk of money, and community development for that part. So, I mean, this is a tough decision no matter how we look at it. I'm not ready to decide one way or the other.
You may want to come back at the end.
Yeah, come back to me.
Back to you on that, yeah.
Can I address the PERS?
Councilmember Vice Mayor Resnikoff?
Brian, were you about to say something?
Yeah, at the appropriate time, I want to address the question about the PERS reserve, but I can hold my comments if that's appropriate. I just want to address.
I would hold for that.
You're going to have other things to comment on, I'm sure. So let's just in big picture here. You asked the question. It's very hard to accept this as is because there's a lot we don't know. So let's start with the reserves. You know, the economic fluctuation reserve, everybody hates to touch it, but it's there for a reason. We take $1 million out, we're at 8.4 left, still significantly above, you know, the minimum, the flooring of we don't want to go to 2, and at 4 we trigger certain planning. But the idea that that's $1 million and others are $1 million seems a little odd to me because this one's sitting with 9.4 million now. So I was a little surprised to see them all being equal, and possibly we have a little more ability to use that. It's hard to understand. It's hard to go down the chart and say, I accept. I'm jumping here on my screen, excuse me, between the chart and the video. But when you see fee-based by various departments, Brian, is that when I see? Let me just pick on one. $40-some thousand, community development, supplies, and I think it's services. I'm looking at my own notes. Does that mean we're reducing every portion of those budgets that hasn't been spent as of this date, or is there something left and we're saying we can save $47,500, but we're going to spend some other amount? Are we putting total freezes on those kind of expenses to start with? I'm just picking on that one. There are similar expenses through every department.
I'm sorry, my microphone was muted. I apologize. So when we did this budget at the beginning of the year, we made a concerted effort to reduce non-essential contracts, non-essential training, and departments reserved certain portion of that was deemed to be necessary. So now, as the year is progressing, If it really at this point still doesn't seem necessary, then we're making additional adjustments.
So I guess what I'm asking, here's the hard thing. I guess what I'm asking is, when I see reduced spending, and that could be supplies, services, dues, books, uniforms, and all that, part of me wants to know what was deemed essential. So if you have, for example, groups that need licenses and certain certifications, that's essential because they can't be inspectors if they don't have that. But, I've been through numerous layoffs in my high-tech career, and sometimes you just cut just about every expense you have, right? And there's nothing being spent on anything that's really, really not essential to the operations of the city or delivery of services. So I'm just wondering, I don't know the answer. I'm wondering, when I add all those up, is there more money to save there? Or what is now deemed essential? It should change, right? Essential now should be a little stricter than it was 6 months ago. So that's why I'm saying I don't know if I accept those, because I don't know what was left in the budget still to spend. Does that make sense? I'm wondering how much was cut and what's left. The other piece of this was raised earlier, I think, by the mayor. So at the end of the day, we're going to get down to the end of this chart and we're going to talk about labor, right? And my position is, this is really serious stuff. This should be the minimal impact on labor. Labor's individuals. We understand this. It's a horrible situation. But we have program cuts along the way that has been said. We don't know what the associated labor is with those program cuts. If I accept those, I'd like to know, I'm going back, excuse me, I'm flipping screens, is the 772,000, 400,000 or 500,000 or 300, I don't know. That's important to know before we move on to the next step of how do we make that differential up. So I feel like not being able to equate program changes to the impact on those labor changes makes it impossible for me to say, oh, that's good, because I don't know how close we're going to be to 7.645 million.
Yeah, and this is the discussion. You recall the council already met in closed session on the labor issue. And we would plan additional meetings to flush that out with you of what that would look like. And I suppose at the end of the day, if you're not content with that, either you would direct us to modify that, or we would come back and modify the direction you're giving us this evening if that's completely unacceptable.
I guess my uncertainty now is, and I appreciate the caller's comment about, I've been through that same thing where everybody takes cuts. We have labor unions and things like that, so that's not something we just implement. We have to have discussions. But I guess when my mindset here is, we want to minimize impact on individuals. We have to well, there's use of reserves and other expense reductions to do that. We also have to prioritize programs. What's essential to city operations? What's essential during a pandemic to residents? They may be using services that are different than they would use in normal times. And then, when we hear earlier on, it was mentioned things should be equitable. Equitable, I think it's fair to say, don't put this burden all on labor. That's equitable when we're looking at other cuts and reserves. But then within the programs we look at, it's not equitable really, because we have this thing called service matrix prioritization that says these are more important than these, and we got to kind of work from the bottom up, right? So I think it's not going to be equitable in that sense, but it's going to be equitable in programs versus other purchases versus individuals or labor. But there's so much I don't know here. I don't know what's equitable, what's not. I don't know what the labor savings are. I don't see approving this tonight because I just think there's so much that we don't know, and maybe that's because we haven't had discussions with the units, with the labor units.
Well, and we can't have those discussions with labor units unless you give us a target.
Chicken and egg. I get it. So I'll leave it at that. But there's a lot missing here that I'm not comfortable with yet. And maybe we have to move forward with something with the understanding when we have those discussions, we may reconvene and say, no, it's not. That's not the way we thought it was going to go.
That's what I'm suggesting, because at some point we have to have that leap of faith to start having those labor discussions. and then circle back if those aren't appropriate to where we are again today and readjust.
If we do nothing, we'll just kick it down the road and that doesn't work. But I don't think just my gut feel is what we do today is not going to be anywhere near final. I just don't see how it could be. We don't have enough info.
Well, that may be true. It may be true that we circle back after we've had those executive session discussions.
Okay.
So my best hope for the evening regarding table 2 is there would be some items on table 2 that we can find agreement on to nudge down the 7.6 to help a little bit. And then we can perhaps have a better sense of what the labor target might be. That would be my hope. It may not be possible.
So Mayor, I would add this as a closing thought for me. It's a good starting point. I'm okay with it in the sense of it presents a very big recovery of the deficit, a big portion of it. But I don't know if the reserve use is exactly as I like it. I don't know if the programs and other expenses cut by department are severe enough. If they have more budget, I don't know. And I don't know what the impact of those cuts are on the labor piece. So I'm happy starting there, but we need to reconvene then and say, what is it? Let's dig deeper.
We'll see what the consensus is on for additional discussions, but I think there seems to be a trend that way. Councilmember Bybee or Lopez, did you have your hands up? No. Councilmember Lopez?
Yeah, I think I did. Thank you. So do you appreciate all the work that staff has put into this, which as others have said is a great start. I do think, I think there's consensus on this, that some form of this is needed. I would support this with modifications tonight. As others have brought up, I'm not sure that a flat $1 million for the 3 funds is the right approach. Appreciate very much Director Fuentes's comments, about not about some of the goals behind that, but I think we can keep those goals and be a little bit more targeted in the methods that we're using, and still maintain a healthy balance that is above the GFOA recommendations as the floor, and some of the other requirements that we have to hit specific to some of those funds. I think we can do that, still leave in a solid place. I'm largely comfortable with most of what's on here. The questions were very helpful in clarifying that, so I appreciate that. And what the one that I have some questions about, or one of them, is the additional vacancy savings, which I know we're having ongoing discussions about whether, how much we want to keep those, what's the right approach. I would be, probably okay with these in the short term, even if we can retain some flexibility to modify some of those positions or rethink. I know that's an ongoing strategic conversation that we're having. The labor piece as well, don't feel that is the right number. I understand the chicken and the egg situation we keep coming in terms of the process, and that will continue to be a conversation, but that to me is not the right number, and happy to I'm not sure if we want to break off that piece of it or delve into it more, or if this is the place for it, but happy to go more to some of my considerations there.
Thank you. Councilmember Bybee, any comments right now?
So at this point, I'm fairly comfortable with the list as being the starting point and being able to move forward. For me, the largest part of it is the lack of information regarding the labor piece of it and our programs and services and how that affects the labor. So I think that's important to have that discussion. And I'm not prepared to say, I'm prepared tonight to say let's use that as a target. It may not be what we end up with. As far as the use of the reserves, just to reiterate, when we adopted the budget in June of last year, it was council direction that we use a minimal amount of reserves. to get us through this. That we also, if our situation worsened, which it has, that we also look at programs and services and evaluate that and make appropriate changes where needed. And so I think we still need to have that discussion. We haven't had that discussion as far as the priority of programs and services as a council. And what was my last? I think I'll leave it at that. I can't, I know I had another thought, but
We'll come back to you.
okay, thank you.
You're allowed. And Councilwoman Landry?
Yeah, so Brian, is the one major decision tonight that we do need to make is about the labor reduction so that you can go into discussions with the bargaining units, correct?
That is correct. And what I was going to suggest is if the council can hone in on that piece, if you're uneasy with the rest of it and give us some general comments, we could come back to revise those other pieces and do the actual budget amendments at a future meeting, taking into account your considerations. If you want some further analysis, we would do it that way. But what we're hoping to get tonight is understanding a target so that we can begin discussions with labor groups on that target.
And just to reemphasize, this is the labor reduction of the 770,200,000 is just for the next quarter. This is not into the next fiscal year.
That is correct.
So based on what we all just said, let's focus on the labor reduction amount. And it's hard one way or the other. We don't know how that's going to be distributed. If that means layoffs or everybody takes a pay cut, we need to wait to see what that discussion is. But it seems like it's a high for a quarter, but when you look at every other line item, it's in line with, we got $1 million here, $1 million there. Then some drop really low, but I would take $1 million down the board on these bigger items and then see where we come back, what they come back with.
Okay. So I'm going to try something and see if we can get there. So, Will, can you put your slide back up?
I'm sure, yes, I will. Just 1 second.
If you'd be so kind.
Okay.
Okay, so this is my take on it. I would like to have us come up with some amount of budget adjustment so that staff can focus, become a little more focused. So I'm going to go through the list here on what I think is comfortable to move forward with and why, and the dollar amount. And then I will use that analysis for what I think we need to plan on for budget additional labor reductions. And I would add in the caveat that we may luck out, frankly. According to some information I received from the National League of Cities, there's a chance we'll have a better sense of what potential federal funding will be by the middle of March, because the additional funds for unemployment end, and they've got to try and make a deal by then. So we may luck out, but we have to plan for the worst. So I think that's our responsibility. So under the first item, which is economic fluctuation reserve, I would put in there $888,000. That is the full amount of the unexpected hit from the RDA property tax. We had no control over that. It just hit us, and I think we have to take that money out. And I think the economic fluctuation reserve is the right place to do it. So rather than $1 million, I would take the 888 from that. The use of emergency reserves, I would leave it 0 for now. The use of the PERS reserve, rather than a million, I would ask $1 million at a minimum, because the PERS reserve is very unique. The PERS reserve is actually there to help us make PERS payments. So I think it's very legitimate to use the PERS reserves for that purpose. I would be comfortable using a little bit more than $1 million to not take the remaining 4 million or whatever it is out of the general funds. I'd be willing to take, I think our current balance in PERS is 2.3. I would take 1.3 out of PERS reserve. That's why it's there. I'd use it. Transfer excess workers' compensation to general fund. I think that was a mathematical shift, and I think that's a safe thing to make basically a correction. I'm going to accept the Public Works Director's recommendation that we transfer the 749,151 to the general fund, but we need in our outlook planning how to replace that money. It needs to be built up over 5 years. The Public Works Director said that's a 5-year layout, and so we need 5 years to replenish that fund. And I don't think we can take that money unless we have a commitment to replace it in 5 years. To transfer the excess CIP project funds back to general fund, that's a given. That's just reconciling accounts. So I would go for that. The transfer of recreation donation funds, as I understand, was simply the funds were never transferred at the appropriate time. I would agree with putting that 154,770 into the general fund. I think I understand the CEA, so I would go with the 87,756 as okay to transfer. The savings from reduction of required OPEB contribution, that's just straight math. 200,000 I think is fine. The anticipated COVID-19 related savings of 250, that's out of the 500,000 we set aside. I'm comfortable if staff feels they've got enough money to finish out the next 5 months. I'm fine with that. I do not support going ahead with the RCS fee-based programs because we don't have the other part of the equation, which is staffing. I'm not okay with the proposed public works reduction non-labor because we don't have any staffing program information. I'm okay, yes, with the proposed legal service reduction of 28,172. I'm not okay with the community development reduction non-labor for the consistent reasons. I'm not okay with additional vacancy savings because council has not had that discussion. I am okay with the 2% vacancy saving already in the adopted budget. I still don't get the math, but it's in there. Existing amended budget deficit. I still don't understand the math here, but I'm okay with that. And then the additional labor reduction of other actions we're not. And if I did my math right, I'm gonna open it up.
What did you just say about labor? You're saying the number's not right?
No, I'm saying the new number, based on what just me personally, my acceptance of what I gave you as a list comes up to 3,532,161. That means that we are 3,952,218 short on labor. So if staff, and again, I'm just speaking for myself here, but maybe it will help others. If that is helpful to staff, I'm supportive of having a resolution making that level of budget adjustments now, so that when staff comes back to council with labor negotiations and the full picture on the other suggestions here, we know the number we're dealing with is what did I just say? 3,952,218. And staff can put that together with what we didn't approve and come up with a number for labor. And that may not be enough direction for staff, but that's what I was trying to accomplish.
I'm sorry, Liz, I'm trying to follow. You were very specific down to each item, down to staff or labor
Right,
reduction.
the last item is additional labor reductions.
Right.
If you do the math of all the items that I said I thought were okay to move forward with, that additional labor reductions, if you take everything else, if you zero out everything else, that 772 number becomes 3,900,000.
Okay, that's I missed the 3 million, the million word there. Okay.
Oh, so 3,952,218. That's the delta that I have not resolved from what staff is recommending.
And going back to the first one on the economic fluctuation number,
yeah,
you were saying that should be more than the million or not the million?
Okay, on the first one, I said it should be 888,000, not a million.
Okay.
The 888,000 was an out of the blue, unpredicted hit from the county assessor on old RDA property. So
okay,
it's a reasonable thing to take out of reserves.
Okay. I'm just, because I was writing down the numbers and I was missing a couple there.
Yeah, so just to repeat from me only, the economic fluctuation reserve would be 888. Nothing at this point from the emergency reserves. The PERS reserve, I would take the million because that's what it is there for. I would consider going up to 1,030,000 because it's there, leaving $1 million in the account. I'm okay with the workers' comp transfer. I'm okay with the courtyard transfer. I'm okay with the excess CIP. I'm okay with the recreation donation fund. I'm okay with the CPOA change. I'm okay with the reduction of required CPOEB, whatever the word is. I'm okay with the additional COVID related savings. I am not okay with the next proposed recreation or the proposed public works. I am okay with the proposed legal service reduction. I am not okay with the proposed community development reduction. I am not okay with the additional vacancy savings. I am okay with the 2% vacancy savings, and I'm okay with the existing amended budget deficit. And if my Excel spreadsheet is correct, that leaves us with a delta of 3,952,218 instead of the 7.4 million in that table. And again, that's just my take on it. If anybody has any thoughts or otherwise approaches.
I'm curious about the economic fluctuation reserve, because that, as Vice Mayor Resnikoff mentioned, that has $9.4 million in there. And it seems like if any of the reserves, that one could have a little more than $1 million, and you're cutting it down to 880.
Yeah, I'm not making any judgment on any additional reuse of reserves. I'm just trying to say, this is what I think is okay right now. We're going to have to come back and revisit all of this, and additional use of reserves may be appropriate. I'm just not comfortable taking $1 million off the top. I think the 888 is a solid, reliable number.
Madam Mayor, can I just address one thing with the RCS reductions?
Yeah.
I know that's a large dollar amount. It's correlated to both revenue reductions and there's no labor that's a component of this. So I was hoping that perhaps Acting Director Bissell can address those issues and explain that. And if your decision is fine, I'm not trying to convince you. I just want to make sure you have an understanding what the reductions are.
And if I may, we can go to the attachment in the staff report that covers that.
It's packet page 274.
Okay.
It starts with proposed RCSP-based program and event reductions. So the non-labor,
Anyone else have it?
It's
Sorry.
up on the screen too. So the non-labor that Director Fuentes is referring to in that chart is full-time employees. So there are labor reductions for temporary personnel that staff had proposed when developing this budget for programs being offered. And again, this was based that by December, we would be in some sort of normalcy efforts. And so it goes by division in this reduction here to kind of show where the reductions are. In our department annually during mid-year, we take actual enrollment numbers from summer through our winter registration, which normally happens in December. This year happened a little bit later. And we're taking those actuals and then we're conservatively projecting out through the end of June. And so this reduction is money that won't get spent between now and June 30th. And there's an offsetting revenue. So while this is $942,000 to fix this deficit issue of a revenue shortfall, we did add to that shortfall by 1.2 million, I think it was. So, you know, there is there's a correlating revenue reduction that's adding to this. And so this is expenses and supplies that won't be used between now and the end of the fiscal year.
So that's actually a very good point. I do follow it. It's both sides of the coin because we've taken the revenue hit in one area, and then this is the corresponding expense on the other. That's helpful.
Exactly. But the full-time equivalents are not in this equation. I mean,
okay, there is staff in here. It does say reduce temporary staff in 4 cases.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, some of the things that I don't understand in here are things like the theater and the pool and the gyms and OCBH.
Sure.
I may be jumping ahead here, but what I was saying is what happens if what's the labor associated with OCBH? Do we just shut OCBH down for 6 months? What happens if we shut the theater down for 6 months? What happens if we shut the pool down for 6 months? That's the kind of picture I'm looking for. So
those would be discussions as far as, like I had said before, that I would present option A and B for council to really kind of decide based on the service level matrix we've presented of what reductions can take place and what services could still be provided.
So you're comfortable that this number of 942, I'm going to say, is a quid pro quo associated with the revenue reduction?
That is correct.
Okay, all right. With that understanding, I would accept that.
You have a hand up, Madam Mayor.
Where? Councilmember Bybee, you're behind the flag there.
So I just wanted to mention on the vacancies. Now, council has directed that all vacant positions are frozen unless there is a pressing need to, it's being determined on a case-by-case basis, and we have filled a few of those positions, but technically they are frozen unless there is some urgent need to fill those, and it's being determined on a case-by-case basis. So I'm comfortable with that figure that's in there. And
I see. Okay.
I'm also not comfortable tweaking these amounts tonight. I really feel that the decisions, we need to have the discussion, the labor discussion, then affect the rest of those amounts. Because we may determine as a council that we may not need $772,000, or we may not want to do that. But you can't make the decision on these numbers until you know what the labor piece of it is, if that makes sense. So I'm not comfortable really tweaking any of those numbers.
So so I'm agreeing, let me try and say back to you. And I may be trying too hard, but I am trying to be constructive for staff as well as council. The list I read off, except for the reserves, the other list, to me, those aren't going to change with future discussions. They're just moving money from Fund A into the general fund account. And I don't think those are going to change. And so I was trying to move forward with those. If you aren't comfortable or other council members aren't comfortable, then so be it. I was trying. So you're not comfortable, Councilmember Bybee, and then I'll go to Councilwoman Landry.
Yeah, I just don't know how you can determine the levels until you've had the labor discussion.
So forgive me, like the transfer of excess workers' compensation to the general fund, the way it's explained in the staff report, to me makes sense. So I'm okay with it. That's basically, and it's the same thing with the courtyard. If staff is saying that they don't need that money right now, and we commit to a way to pay it back in 5 years, I'm okay with that. It's just my approach. I'm trying to look at what we can do right now to focus staff on a smaller amount. That's all. If it doesn't make sense for you, that's fine. Councilwoman Landry?
Yes, so I'm going to go back to what I asked Brian earlier. Right now, tonight, we need a number for labor reduction to go to have the negotiation so that all these other questions can be answered after that. So I don't see the point of going back through every line item, except for get down to labor reduction and say target number. Is it 772? Is it 500? Is it $1 million? Give them a number so that we can get, because then once they do that and come back, we're going to have answers to a lot of these other program questions that we've been asking.
Okay, Vice Mayor Resnikoff?
Yeah, thank you. Let me ask a question to Councilmember Bybee. I wasn't sure I heard this right. Were you suggesting going with these numbers and using the 772 as an initial starting point with labor?
Yes, with the caveat that we could come back and tweak any of these numbers depending on what council decides in as far as labor.
Okay, I agree with that, because I don't think we're going to come to an agreement on tweaking every line. You know, we're not going to fix this on reserves, but I think when I started here, I think the economic reserve used to be $6 million, I think. I think that's what it was when we threw a recession. It's now 9.4. Frankly, I think we can go higher than $1 million. It's there for economic downturns, which is what we're in. I don't agree with eliminating any use of emergency reserve. It's for fiscal emergencies. This is why we're here. I don't want to balance this entire $7 million on it, but I certainly won't be looking at cutting it less. And I think certainly in the economic fluctuation reserve, we could do a little more. So, but right now I would agree with Councilmember Bybee. I think I heard Councilwoman Landry saying the same thing. We have to have a number. To me, I'm okay with that number. Mayor, I don't know if you were when you said it's 3.9 million in your numbers, I don't know if you were suggesting going to labor with that kind of number.
No.
But even then in that circumstance, we still need a labor number. And I appreciate this exercise. I don't agree with all the numbers. And I think there can be an urgency to save more in programs and other expenses, and staff can go back and look at that. But I'm okay with the 772, 417 as a starting point. And let's get some feedback, and we have to have discussions.
All right, so if I may just clarify, my numbers were a starting point. I was not saying not to use reserves down the line, more reserves in any account. I was just trying to narrow the bottom line. I absolutely am not accepting of the 772 number. It's too low. It's too low.
What if we gave a range and said, just because of the weird numbers of in the 7 at the end, what if we said 775 to 1 million and send that back to the labor negotiations to have, at least they need a target number of some kind. And if you're not comfortable with the 772, what is the high number? Is it 1 million? Is it 1.5 million? I mean, all of this is, we're talking jobs and pay here. So yeah. Can we give it a range? I mean,
so I'm sorry. I'm not being good enough to explain what I was trying to do. I was trying to come up with a number, the 3,900,000 odd, as where staff needs to focus on next, with any and all options, including labor. But when they come back, I was hoping they would come back with things such as program reductions, I also was hoping they would come back with doing like a 32-hour work week. I was hoping they would come back with a whole range of outside the box ideas to close that $3,900,000. I feel like giving them a labor number, it is a bit, it's too arbitrary. This the $7,772,000 number here is predicated on using the economic reserves as that are currently identified, and includes a massive number of frozen staff positions. And council hasn't made that decision yet. So to say that the 772 number is a good place to start doesn't make sense to me.
What would you want it to be?
Well,
I mean, my suggestion of a range,
I mean,
775 to $1 million.
It should be as high as $1.5 million at least.
The high you would want $1.5 million.
Yes.
Can we ask the other council members then if that's where, because that we're down to that. We've been going for 3+ hours. We haven't had a break. So if we're down to the labor discussion, that's the only decision they need tonight. We all agree that everything else is we need more information on, but they need a number to go back to labor. So we haven't heard from Sergio and what Paul.
Councilwoman Landry, just one second. If I can back up and say that staff has asked us to provide direction on the list in table 2. And they suggested we could have them go forward with no change. We could modify it. We could ask them to bring it back, and we could approve it and add. The second, and in order to do those actions, there's a resolution associated with that. So what I am hearing now is that council is willing to go forward with some number, be it the 772 or whatever, but not have council, not have staff complete the resolution and make all these budget shifts. So there's 2 aspects to the question. So I'd like to go around the table and start with Councilmember Bybee.
I'm sorry, Mayor Gibbons. I've been waiting my turn. If I can just have a chance to give some input.
Sure.
I
wave your hand more.
Yeah, no problem. I was just patient. So I again understand the process. I don't trying to be as broad and then hone in. I don't support going under the $1 million for the use of the reserves. I echo some of what's been said that I think there's room in the economic fluctuations reserve. Mayor Gibbons, I echo your comments that you're making about the PERS reserve, that they had special fund and that's what it's there. My concern, and I can sense I may be in the minority here, but given that and some of the opportunities there and the other recommended actions, which I'm largely okay with, I would not feel comfortable supporting the 772 number because of the impact of those other funds and savings. And I think when we're looking, I know we're all coming from the position of wanting the long-term fiscal sustainability of our city. But when we're talking about job cuts, I really think we have to look at every other option. That said, I also understand that this is a long-term issue, and don't. I know we can't just keep going into reserves, but I do think that when we're talking about the next quarter, that I'm not sure that we're at that level where we would need that such a drastic amount of cuts. I do. Councilman Landry, you made this point earlier, but I just want to emphasize that for the amount of cuts that is in this table, that's for the quarter. To achieve that annually would be $3,089,000 and change. So that is a significant amount of our workforce. I'm concerned that, not putting a date or trying to be overly optimistic with the projections, but that as we come back in recovery, we actually need many of those positions to bring in some of the revenue that we depend on. And you can go down the line. Many of those positions are associated with revenue. So I would be worried that we'd be trading a short-term fix for what's really going to require more structural, long-term solutions that I think we also have the opportunity to pursue those concurrently. But I'm not at the point where I'd be comfortable supporting that number, as has also been mentioned. I've been following closely the fiscal package that's in Congress. And again, that's not going to solve the structural issues we have here. We still need some form of what's on the table. But from what I'm seeing, feel confident that it would address the labor component of that. And also, want to speak to the fact that I think labor to this point has been negotiating in good faith and has borne many cuts and I think would continue to find, I would hope that they'd find opportunities to continue to do so. That can be maybe not get us the full amount that's there, the 772, but that would be a component of this. So that's where I'm at this point. Echo the concerns about the long-term outlook and the need to keep coming back. This is a dynamic discussion, but wanted to put that on the table.
So could I ask for clarification, Councilmember Lopez? There are two items before us. One is there anything that we can provide direction to staff to move forward with a budget resolution to shifting funds? I don't believe heard that the council is comfortable having the staff make the budgetary financial changes. They're comfortable starting with this as a starting point, but not making the labor changes because we don't know enough. Is that consistent with where you are?
It is. I'm just not comfortable with the labor number that's here. And I would suggest perhaps we could split that up into two motions, because I suspect there may be agreements on some parts and not in others.
That's fine. We can do that. And you're thinking that the 772 is too high.
It is, given the not too high in terms of an overall amount, but in terms of the I think we have room in the reserves with these numbers and some other areas. So I'm not sure that I wouldn't start at the place of.
Okay. So I'm trying to help with that. So it is of your thought that the 3 million identified in the reserves should go higher to reduce the labor impact. You would be willing to have staff come back with that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I think that is it. I want to clarify one more time. I was not saying limit the economic reserves reductions to the numbers I gave. I was just trying to create a new table 2 to move forward with. That. Vice Mayor Resnikoff, and then we'll go back to Councilmember Bybee and then Councilwoman Landry.
Thank you. So I'm generally in agreement with what Councilmember Lopez just said. Some of what you're looking at is the next year problem of 4 times this. I get that. And that's important to look at. I tried to say it earlier, maybe I didn't say it as well, to not throw everything out and then not be able to recover. So I believe economic fluctuation reserve exists for this kind of situation. So I am comfortable going higher. I believe the emergency reserve exists. I'm comfortable with the number they have here. And I think we can probably reduce some impacts on labor. That being said, I'm okay with this number as a starting, but we have to start somewhere. And I don't think we're going to agree on a number. So I'm okay with this structure. I'm not okay with implementing, especially impacts on jobs right now, because we don't know what we can do. We don't know the impact of some of these program suggestions on labor. But in the meantime, We can do things like continuing, obviously, to freeze all positions, and maybe all positions should be frozen except for specific exceptions that we make. We can go forward a lot with reductions in spending and things like supplies and training and all those things that are in here, because if we need more, we're okay. I don't think we should be spending in the meantime. I don't think we should be hiring in the meantime until we figure out what we have to do with labor. But ultimately, I'm going to support a little higher use of reserve at least, and hopefully keep this number below what we have here for labor. But let's start somewhere. I'm okay with opening the discussions here.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Bybee?
So I'm comfortable with the starting point of the 772 with the labor. We may not get to that point where we may decide that we want to use more reserves, but we need to have an open discussion. We have to evaluate our programs and services. We have to determine what's essential, what is discretionary. Is there room for any changes within the organization? And you can't have that discussion unless you talk to labor. So I'm comfortable with that amount. It's not saying that we're going to, that's the final number, but we have to have a starting point.
Councilwoman Landry?
We got two already saying the number's good enough. I don't want to go higher. I was trying to say before, I was trying to figure out where you were, Liz. So if we use 772 as a high-end target, but we need this discussion with them. We're doing a lot of what ifs without that. We need more about the programs, and we won't know about the programs till we know more about labor. So can we just pick a number and leave it with what they have, and maybe they come in with less and we do use more out of reserves? I do think that this economic fluctuation reserve at 9.4 million, that's what that's there for. If we took 2 million out of that, we're getting to where we're not having to make huge labor cuts. So can we at least, I know Sergio, you're saying that's too high, but what's the range? 500 to 775?
Well, so Councilman, just your own comments, please. So are you now saying you're okay with this list?
No, I'm only talking about labor right now.
So the question is the same as I asked Councilmember Lopez, and I'll have to ask Vice Mayor Reznikov. Are you okay with the 772 number for the beginnings of labor negotiations and not moving forward with any budget adjustments based on this list?
Yes.
Okay. And Vice Mayor Reznikov, I didn't ask you that. Are you okay with this list and using the 772 number, but not doing any budget adjustments?
Yes, but I think this is a time, even unofficially, to reduce spending and to stop hiring. I mean, these are going to be things we decide, but why would we do that in the meantime? This isn't a loophole to say quickly get this in and quickly hire somebody. Let's do those as we've been doing. And but I'm certainly in favor of using this labor number as a top number. Yeah.
And Councilmember Bybee, and then I'll go back to Councilmember Lopez.
I'm comfortable with the 772 and not making any decision tonight on the other funds.
All right, thank you. And Councilmember Lopez?
Thank you. I appreciate the discussion, and given that we need a starting point, clearly, while for my comments, of course, hope that it doesn't get up to that level, I'd be comfortable moving forward with the 7072 as a starting point for discussions.
Okay. Thank you. So we have one more question to answer for staff, and it may be decided that we don't need it, but I'll come back to it because we said we would. I'm not comfortable with the 772. And the reason I'm not is because if we don't go into union negotiations, labor negotiations with an appropriately high number, that we can then say, gee, we don't need to do this, that's great. But if we come in with a low number and we have to go back and negotiate even more cuts, then I think that one, delays our ability to implement the necessary changes. And two, it causes extra angst. So that's why I think the 772 number is too low. I think, I just think it cuts down on the negotiations. And if we have to go back for more, it's going to be a tough conversation. So that's why I'm not comfortable with the 772. So going forward, I don't think we need I'm going to make a couple of different discussions here, but I don't think we need a motion. I think there's consensus on this. And the one thing we said we would go back to is on the projections. Staff has used the finance revenue of the past 6 months to forecast for the next 6 months. Are we comfortable with that? And if not, what direction or percentage would we like to recommend staff use? And the two areas of revenue that were specifically identified were TOT and sales tax. Is the council wishing to have changes made to those projection numbers or to leave them as is? I'll start with the vice mayor because you had thoughts on that.
I think we're bringing all this back at some point. I'm willing to take their projections and their expense cuts here as is until we have the first discussions and then address it. I just don't know I have enough to say that it's wrong. And if it is wrong, how much should it be? I don't know.
Okay. Councilmember Bybee?
I don't really, wouldn't have a target number. I just, looking at it realistically, that I just think that sales tax is going to be low and TOT especially is going to be low. So as conservative as we can be, based on the data that we have, is what I would recommend that how we move forward, but I wouldn't over exaggerate it.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Lopez and then Councilwoman Landry.
Yeah, my concerns are more about the long range picture. So that would just be my general feedback to staff, and the extent that we can forecast different scenarios, I think would be helpful. In terms of the short-term picture, I'm not sure that I have number that I could confidently say is better.
Thank you. Councilwoman Landry?
I agree with Councilmember Bybee and Councilmember Resnikoff and Councilmember Lopez. I don't think we have enough information. I want to be as conservative as possible. And I think sales tax and TOT are going to go down.
Okay, so my comment is I do not think that the TOT and the sales tax projections are low enough. I don't think they're conservative enough. I think there's too much optimism in the numbers. And I am making my comments because last April, May, June, I really was challenging staff and challenging myself to say, I want to be an optimistic pessimist, but I'm really worried that we're not cutting back as much as we need to. And in fact, the numbers have taken us where we didn't cut back enough. So I think we were too optimistic when we put the budget together. And I am concerned that we're using the same mental and mathematical approaches that are still too optimistic. So I can only tell you, I agree with Councilwoman Bybee. My gut is telling me that sales tax and TOT tax, among others, are not going to be great. So I'm going to offer that as a caution to staff. I just think they're too optimistic about how much revenue they're going to bring in. And as for this staff recommended budget adjustment table 2, I had hoped we could provide staff with direction on some budget adjustments to narrow the staff's focus going forward. And I have said, I think the 772 number is too low. I think it doesn't give the labor negotiation team enough flexibility for what we may end up facing. But I agree, we don't have enough information. So my question to staff is, City Manager, do you have information that you have found useful in providing direction?
Yeah, I think if I understand the direction correctly, that we'll move forward with the target for labor reductions of the 772,000. And then the other budget amendments that are in table 2 we'll bring back after we've had a chance to vet through those labor reductions with the council. Probably in March, we'll be coming back with those budget amendments or some revisions to those based on council comments.
I would add that there is council reservation about the revenue assumptions. And I would add that there was considerable discussion on council with labor associated with programs. So whatever you come back with needs to answer those questions, I think, or provide that type of information. And
okay.
Did someone say? Anyone else? Any other summary points that the city manager should have? Okay. Seeing none, we will move on to the last item of the evening, which is council reports. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate the enormous amount of work that who wants to do council reports? Yeah, Councilwoman Landry.
Oh, I think Sergio beat me to the hand up. Let's go, Sergio.
Sure. I appreciate it. I had a meeting of the VTA PAC Policy Advisory Committee, and probably most relevant for in terms of our community was some discussion. There's a grant program being administered by VTA, and part of one of the 5 projects that were recommended to move forward included the RIDE program, which Campbell has participated in the past of West Valley cities, and the grant would expand it down to South County areas that are not served. And the RIDE program serves our senior population. There's some discussion about whether to include it as part of the recommendation, but ultimately ended up passing unanimously after some discussion by myself and Councilmember Rob Rennie, who spoke to the program and the important population it serves.
Councilmember Lopez, did you get a copy of the letter that the city of Campbell and individual letters from other cities that wrote to the VTA board and the PAC regarding the Measure B funds reallocation?
I did, yes. Thank you for that.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure it actually did get distributed.
It did, yeah.
You never know these days. Okay. Councilwoman Landry.
Oh, okay. I mentioned last time about the library district JPA forum that we had. Liz and I are the economic development subcommittee. We had pretty good conversation. And in the end, I made a suggestion, instead of calling it the economic recovery, to call it the economic revival, to have a more positive spin on the term that we're using.
Thank you. Councilmember Bybee. No.
Oh, I attended the Santa Clara County Cities Association meeting, or Cities Association meeting of Santa Clara County. I know they have a different name. And there was a presentation by the Silicon Valley Clean Energy people, and they talked about their resilience grant program that's available to all of the cities. And it's guaranteed money for each city. And all they need to do is submit a project, and the deadline has been extended. They weren't specific about the extension date. So I would encourage staff to follow up on that, and maybe we have a project that we might be able to get some reimbursement for. Thank you.
So that's the funding that I've been talking about for quite a long time. And they also have a program where they give free technical advice on energy conservation systems and designs that's available to any project, any public project, which is really great. Vice Mayor Resnikoff?
Thank you. I attended the West Valley Clean Water and West Valley Solid Waste JPAs. For good or bad, I continue as chair for each one for the third straight year. It's kind of like volunteering where everybody else takes a step back, and there you are. But I've been on the solid waste one. This is the 7th year, so I'm the only consistent person there. But we're finishing our disposal contract. Next year will be the collection contract, so that's all going well. I did West Valley Sanitation District meeting as well, where I passed the chair to Chair Turner from Montsereno, and also the TPAC meeting, which is the water treatment plant meeting, where the sanitation district uses the San Jose Santa Clara water treatment plant. So we have a meeting once a month to go over those issues. And that was everything.
Thank you. Everybody else set? I did my usual range of Silicon Valley Clean Energy board meetings and executive committee meetings. I also had a meeting with Supervisor Ellenberg to try and connect better with the county and some of the programs that they're doing at the county level and what might interrelate with city programs. They just did one about changing fees and eliminating fees for business and so forth. And Campbell's already done a lot of that. But it seemed like we should have a little more coordination. And then we all went to the city clerk interviews, so everyone knows that that process is continuing. And also there was a meeting and then subsequent action on the Coles cleanup of the homeless encampment there. We do have to be aware of where are the homeless going to be going. And that's an item that should come back to council. Another item that was brought up from the community was the use of masks at city facilities like the community center, and there seems to be a significant problem with people on the track and around the community center not wearing and using the equipment and not wearing masks. So each of you received at least one letter, if not 3, from some community members who are concerned about that. And if it should come back to council, please let the city manager know if that needs to come on the council for a discussion. And there was one more thing. It's gone out of my head. So it's late. Oh yes, Sergio, Councilmember Lopez.
Yeah, just quickly, since Mayor mentioned your meeting with our supervisor, I also met with Cupertino Mayor Darcy Paul, who's the West Valley representative on the VTA, and he expressed a willingness to work together and amplify Campbell's concerns and working relationship. So, we'll be happy to facilitate that to the extent.
That's good. Yes, we're all on the West Valley Mayors and Managers group, so it's a nice connection between all the different roles we have. That's great. Councilwoman Landry.
Yes, now that you mentioned meeting with the supervisors, I had a Zoom call with our councilwoman in our adjacent district in San Jose, Pam Foley, and to discuss the Cambrian Park Plaza development project and the impacts to traffic that's going to have through Campbell, the interchange at San Tomas Expressway, Camden, and Kirtner Avenue, which is the cut through. And I mentioned to her that when Don Rocha was the council member and the Good Samaritan Project came forward, the Samaritan Project gave $1 million of mitigation money to District 9 to spend. And I asked if we could be in that, the Cambrian Park Plaza would be able to give some money to Campbell for traffic mitigation.
I hope you keep keeping track of that, because that's so important. That is really good information. And now I remembered my other 2 points. One is, as with Councilwoman Landry when she was mayor, every Saturday morning, the city manager and I join council members, mayors, and city managers from all 15 cities in the county to talk about COVID and all the measures that the county is taking. It is fair to say that the state's constantly changing rules and constantly changing program oversight is very problematic, because the Santa Clara County was doing a remarkably good job and getting better by the day. So we're trying our best to understand what it is we can all do, and the ambassador program and using the dashboard and things like that to keep everybody informed. So I think that's, we'll just keep doing that. It's a lot of time on a Saturday morning, but it seems to be useful at ironing out problems. So I appreciate that. And my last 2 points were Silicon Valley Clean Energy sent out a press release to let everyone know that on March 1st, PG&E is raising its rates, and Silicon Valley Clean Energy will continue to be 1% below PG&E rates. So we are still 100% carbon free and 50 to 100% renewable at a cost less than PG&E. And the board approved a new carbon-free hydropower contract. So continuing to invest in what do you call it? Carbon-free power sources. And the final comment is, this is a leftover. It was supposed to have started in October of 2020, but with COVID, it did not. It is the time of use billing rate, and that will be starting in June of 2021. So in a few months, everyone will start seeing a significant change in how their bills rates are being allocated. So you'll get information in the mail, and do keep an eye out for that to have it explained. In the long run, it's been beta tested in different parts, it's statewide. It was organized by the state. We're just complying with state rules. And overall, it appears that people will stay the same or slightly save on their energy bills once they get used to the change. Okay, now I'm done. Anybody else want to sneak in there? Okay, thank you.